Chapter 1240. He glanced at Fengjiu and asked, "Where's the letter?" "It's here." She took out the letter from her bosom and handed it to him. The tall and thin man took the letter and read it, then nodded, and, "Follow me. When you get to the mansion, someone will teach you the rules." As he spoke, he glanced at the bag at the side and asked, "What's that?" "It's a local specialty. I brought it for my uncle." She grinned. Hearing this, he frowned in disdain. "All right, carry it and let's go." Thus, Fengjiu carried the bag and followed behind the man, entering Xianyuan Mo's mansion from the back door. The tall and thin man brought Fengjiu in front of the old man and said, "I've brought the person, and also brought you some local specialties." As he spoke, he glanced at the youth carrying the big bag, shook his head and turned to leave. The old man looked at the youth in front of him and was a little surprised. "You're Daniel?" "Yes, uncle." "You don't recognize me?" "I saw you once when I was 7 or 8 years old." Fengjiu smiled and squinted her eyes as she spoke. The way she called him uncle was so smooth that people who didn't know would take it seriously. "This is the local specialties I brought for you, please take a look." She bent down slightly and was about to open the bag. All right, no need to look, come with me." As he spoke, he led her to the servant's room and said, "I begged the housekeeper for a long time before he agreed to this job. Once you're in here, it's different from outside. You have to do things seriously and do whatever the master tells you to do. In this mansion, we're servants, so we can't raise our heads to look at the master. That's rude behavior. If you don't do it well, you'll lose your life." "All right, I understand." She followed at the side and curiously looked around as she walked. She could feel that there were no hidden guards in this place because this was the place where the servants lived. The places where there were hidden guards were usually the courtyard where the masters lived, as well as some important places in the manor. This is where the servants live. You can walk around as you please. Follow me later. I'll tell you where you can't enter without permission. With that, the old man pointed to a room in front of them and said, "This is the room. I've prepared the clothes for you inside. Here, servants need to wear servants' clothes. Go in and change. I'll wait for you here." "All right, I got it." She nodded and walked in. Seeing that it was a simple single room, she quickly changed her clothes and walked out. She followed the old man to familiarize herself with the area. At the same time, she was told that the inner courtyard was an important place and that she was not allowed to enter without the master's summons. When she heard that, she couldn't help but be a little startled. Didn't that mean that even if she wanted to see Xianyuan Mo's here, it would be difficult? It couldn't be, right? "Daniel? What are you looking at?" "That place is the main courtyard, the master's courtyard. You can't casually look at it," the old man said, indicating for him to quickly leave. Fengjiu's mouth twitched. "Can't I just look around a courtyard? Would it kill him to take a look?" She cursed in her heart. Just as she was about to leave with him, she heard a familiar voice. "That brat over there, come over here." Fengjiu stopped and turned around to see the person walking over. He was dressed in tight clothes and had a familiar face. There was no doubt that it was Hui Lang. They hadn't seen each other for a few years, but he still had that annoying look on his face. Seeing him, she couldn't help but reveal an imperceptible smile. An acquaintance. Chapter 1241. Fengjiu glanced at him and grinned, coming. "Guard captain, he's new." Before the old man could finish his words, he saw that the person had been taken away. Seeing this, he couldn't help but worry. He was taken to the inner courtyard on his first day here. If something happened, would that child, Daniel, be able to deal with it? Thinking of this, he couldn't help but want to take a look. But after taking a step forward, he restrained himself. This was the manor. There shouldn't be anything wrong, right? Thinking about it, he decided to wait and see. If there really wasn't anything, he would go find the housekeeper. On the other side, Fengjiu followed behind Hui Lang, but she didn't look around. Because she felt that there were many auras in here, they should be hidden guards hiding here. If looking around made them suspicious, then all her efforts would be in vain. Go, scrub that outhouse clean. He brought Fengjiu to a outhouse and stood to the side, pinching his nose. With a look of disgust, he motioned for Fengjiu to quickly scrub the outhouse clean. Ah! Scrub the outhouse. Fengjiu was a little dumbfounded. Hui Lang didn't recognize her when he first met her, and instead brought her here to scrub the outhouse and wash the toilet bowls. This ingrate, he really needed to be taught a lesson. Yes. Hurry up, hurry up. He pinched his nose and looked around. At this moment, when he saw Ying Yi walking over, his face suddenly changed. Why are you here? Ying Yi walked over and glanced at Fengjiu. He didn't recognize her and just saw that she was an ordinary servant, so he didn't pay attention to her. Everyone in the manor had been strictly investigated. Naturally, no one else would sneak in. Even if there was, they wouldn't be able to sneak into the inner courtyard where the master was. The master punished you to scrub the outhouse and wash the toilet bowls. Is this how you get punished? If the master finds out, you'll at least be whipped a few times. If you don't say it, no one will. If you don't say it, the master won't know. Hui Lang stared at him and smiled. Shadow, we've been friends for many years. Don't you think? Master told me to keep an eye on you, so I have to keep an eye on you. As he spoke, he gestured to Fengjiu. All right, you can leave. Fengjiu nodded and responded. Just as he was about to leave, Hui Lang stopped him. No. Who's going to clean the latrine if you leave? And who's going to wash the bathtub? You only know how to get new servants to do your work. Does everyone in the inner court avoid you? Ying Yi glanced at Hui Lang and said. She saw through his thoughts with a single glance. Although there were many hidden guards in the inner courtyard, there were only 2 manservants who acted as assistants. Because their master liked peace and quiet and didn't like too many people talking, he kept the 2 of them by his side. Now that he was punished, he naturally didn't dare to order the 2 manservants around. Because the 2 of them served by their master's side, no matter how bold he was, he didn't dare to act rashly. Ying Yi glanced at him and then narrowed his eyes, saying, the master said that since you didn't wash it yourself this time, you'll be punished even more severely later. Hearing this, Hui Lang's body stiffened. No way. Whether it's true or not, you should know. Ying Yi said and looked at the manservant on the side, ordering, you can leave. Yes. Fengjiu responded and then moved to leave. When she walked out of the inner courtyard, she stopped and looked back, revealing a smile. Chapter 1242. As for Hui Lang, she looked in the same direction as the corners of her lips curled up into a faint smile. He dared to make her scrub the toilet. Hui Lang's guts had grown. She returned to the outer courtyard and the old man heaved a sigh of relief. You scared me to death. Thank goodness you're all right. The old man patted his chest and said, why did the guard call you over? Did anything happen? Nothing happened. It seems like he was punished by his master to scrub the toilet and he wanted me to scrub it. She smiled and asked, Uncle, what do I usually do? You're new here, so you can only do odd jobs in the outer courtyard. Let's go. I'll bring you to see the butler. He gestured for Fengjiu to follow him. Butler? Her eyes flickered, and then she followed behind him. The butler of the crown prince's residence could not be an ordinary person. Therefore, she was looking forward to seeing what kind of person the butler was. When she followed the old man to the front courtyard, she saw a young man instructing the servants in the residence. Yes, that person looked to be around 25 or 26 years old. He had an air of nobility, but the servants in the residence called him the butler. Butler, this is my nephew, Li Dainyu. The old man introduced and pulled Fengjiu forward. Quickly kneel down to the butler and thank him for giving you this opportunity. Ah. Fengjiu stood there in a daze and looked at the man like a country bumpkin. What ah? I told you to kneel down to the butler. The old man turned around and said. Hearing this, Fengjiu shook her head and blinked her clear and innocent eyes. No, my father said that I can't kneel to anyone. Moreover, the people who kneel in the countryside are all dead. I've never kneeled to a living person. Hearing this, the old man almost fainted. He stared blankly and raised his hand to hit Fengjiu's head. You idiot! However, before he could touch Fengjiu, she covered her head and moved away. When the man saw this, he smiled and waved his hand. That's enough. He's just a child. Why bother with him? He turned to look at Fengjiu and asked, You're called Li Dainyu? He found it funny that such a skinny young man was called Dainyu. Yes. Fengjiu stood properly and looked at him timidly. Are you afraid of me? The man asked with a smile, his voice gentle. Hearing this, Fengjiu shook his head and said weakly, I'm not afraid of you. I'm only afraid that you'll chase me away. I don't want to go home and farm. Ha ha ha, I won't. As long as you work hard, I won't chase you back home to farm. The man chuckled and said, From now on, you'll be called Little Li in this mansion. Yes, Butler Xie. She grinned, and her smile made her disguised face look exceptionally dazzling. When the man saw this, his eyes flashed and he was a little surprised. He thought to himself, this young man's eyes are really dazzling. However, this young man looks like a simple and innocent person. He can be reassured to use such a person. Thus, he asked again, has his work been arranged? His gaze fell on the old man. This old servant will let him do odd jobs in the outer courtyard. This newcomer has never learned before and is clumsy. I'm afraid that he won't do well, so I'll let him do some odd jobs to familiarize himself with. Odd jobs. Chapter 1243. The old man was pleasantly surprised and hurriedly replied, Yes. You may leave. He waved his hand. Seeing this, the old man bowed with Fengjiu and retreated. When they were some distance away, he looked at Fengjiu from head to toe and said, You're really lucky. Many people in the outer courtyard want to enter the inner courtyard but can't. You've only been here for half a day and the steward has already allowed you to enter the inner courtyard. I really couldn't tell that you were such a lucky person. Hearing this, Fengjiu grinned and scratched his head in embarrassment. It's the steward's good taste. Wasn't it his good taste? He knew to transfer her to the inner courtyard to water the flowers and sweep the floor. Compared to Hui Lang, this steward was much more reliable. But, where did this steward come from? He didn't look like a normal person. Thus, she said, Uncle, this steward looks like a noble young master outside. What do you mean by, like a noble young master outside? The steward is a noble young master. The old man said and lowered his voice, Uncle will tell you. This steward in our residence is surnamed Yang and named Yong. He's the second young master of the Yang family in the imperial city. However, he's been following our master and has been a steward in the residence for many years. Oh, so that's how it is. He gave up being a noble young master and ran over to be Shenyuan Moza's steward. What a weirdo. Alright, let's go. I'll take you to find the steward of the inner courtyard. The steward outside is Uncle, but the inner courtyard is not under Uncle's control. You have to be smart. If something happens, Uncle won't be able to save you. I know Uncle. Don't worry. She replied with a smile and followed him inside. The next morning, she woke up before the sun rose. After washing up, she went to the garden to water the flowers. Then, she took a broom and swept the floor from time to time. From time to time, she looked around and saw that there were servant girls in the outer courtyard. However, The inner courtyard was filled with men. Were they really not attracted to women? There wasn't even a servant girl walking around in the inner courtyard. Did they only use manservants? She was surprised as she scanned the front yard of the main courtyard. However, before she could get close, she was sent away. This is the master's courtyard, there are people who clean it. You can go elsewhere. The guard said in a deep voice, staring at the Fengjiu who was holding the broom. Oh, Fengjiu replied. He poked his head out to take a look as he walked away. When she arrived at the garden and saw that there was no one around, she went to the stone steps and sat down. Even her house wasn't so heavily guarded. It was really difficult to get close to him. She hadn't even seen his shadow since yesterday. Wouldn't it be a waste of time if she continued to waste time like this? She rested her chin on her hands and thought for a while. Then, her eyes darted around. Why don't we explore deeper at night? However, other than the nascent soul cultivators in the mansion, there seemed to be a few very strong auras. There should be cultivators above the nascent soul stage guarding the mansion. If she was mistaken for an assassin and killed, wouldn't it be a great injustice? Hearing the sound of footsteps approaching, she quickly stood up and took a few steps to squat down in the flower bushes. She pulled out the weeds while paying attention to the people coming. I didn't hear any news about the ghost doctor. So the master's temper hasn't been good these past few days. So I was punished by the master to wash the toilet because of a small matter. What is this Renxiang doing? He's far away so the master can't fix him, but I'm close. I've become a ready-made punching bag. Chapter 1244. They would never have guessed that she was already here and had even snuck into the manor. What are you doing there? Hui Lang noticed the figure squatting in front of the flowers and raised his voice to ask. Fengjiu turned around and grinned, I'm weeding. It's you. Hui Lang glared, aren't you from the outer courtyard? Why are you in the inner courtyard? The steward let me in. I'm in charge of sweeping, watering and weeding this area. Yang Yong let you in? Hui Lang muttered strangely, since when can a newcomer sneak into the inner courtyard? Ing Yi saw this and said, didn't you drag him in yesterday? That's different. There's nothing different. As he spoke, he glanced at Fengjiu and then looked away. Yang Yong has crossed his goal, so he naturally trusts you. Let's go. Hui Lang also looked away and didn't pay any more attention to him. Yang Yong was the steward and under his management, there had never been any accidents. His ability was obvious to all. If he could let someone in, then it should be fine. Seeing them leave, Fengjiu squatted back to weeding from time to time. After staying in the inner courtyard for a few days, she still didn't see Xianyuan Mo's. This made her a little angry. On this day, she went to sweep in front of the courtyard again, thinking that he should have come out by now, right? Or did she not see him when he came out? At this time, she didn't know that on the other side, in a courtyard in the inner courtyard, Yang Yong looked at the old man in front of him and asked, how is it? After being in the inner courtyard for a few days, the most frequent place is Master's main courtyard. When no one is around, he slacks off. When someone passes by, he pretends to sweep with a broom. Last night, he even fell asleep in the flowers. This morning, he went to sweep in front of Master's courtyard again. From the initial observation, it can be concluded that there is a problem with this person, and he is definitely targeting Master. The old man's voice was low and serious. He looked at Yang Yong, should we get rid of him? Hearing this, Yang Yong smiled warmly and asked, did you see him harm anyone? Not at the moment, but he has ulterior motives. What about strength and cultivation? Can't you feel it? Yang Yong asked again. No, maybe it's because he's cultivating a concealment technique. I can't sense his cultivation level. Hearing this, Yang Yong nodded. I understand. You may leave. I'll take care of it. Seeing this, The old man nodded and turned around to leave. After a slight pause, Yang Yong stood up, clasped his hands behind his back, and walked out. Only then did he circle around the fake mountain, pass through the courtyard, and come to a place not far from the main courtyard, where he saw that figure sweeping the floor with a leisurely and lazy look. Looking at the young man, his hand moved slightly, and a silver needle as thin as a strand of hair shot out without warning towards the young man. He watched quietly and saw that the lazy-looking youth didn't even turn her head. She only tilted her head slightly, and the silver needle brushed past her cheek and sank into the trunk of a large tree not far away. The needle penetrated 3 centimeters deep into the trunk of the tree. Seeing this, Fengzhou's eyes moved slightly, and he turned around to look, "Housekeeper." Seeing this, Yang Yong nodded and walked over, asking in a warm voice, "Are you used to this place?" The young man's unexpectedly sharp senses surprised him. He didn't even turn his head, and easily avoided the silver needle shot out by him. Chapter 12:45. "I'm all right," she replied with a smile. "Come with me for a walk." Feng 9 smiled appreciatively when she saw the figure walking away after leaving her words behind. He really wasn't an ordinary person. Compared to Hui Lang, he wasn't just a little more astute. He was able to tell that something was amiss so quickly. However, she had only wandered around in front of the main courtyard. Was it that obvious? She thought to herself, but continued to follow the figure in front of her. She hadn't expected that Xianyuan Mose hadn't even seen her yet. His steward had already seen through her. She had wanted to give him a surprise. It looked like there was no chance this time. At that moment, neither of them noticed that Xianyuan Mose, who was standing at the window of a nearby building, had inadvertently caught sight of the figure following behind Yang Yong. When he saw that figure, his heart skipped a beat. He leaned forward slightly to take a closer look. A look of astonishment appeared in his deep eyes. Fengzhou. Why was she here? This woman had actually snuck into the 8 great empires without a word. She had even snuck into his residence. Although they were a little far apart, he could still recognize her at a glance. It wasn't because of that face. That face belonged to a completely unfamiliar person. She must have done something to it. What made him recognize her was her figure and the habit of her movements. Although they hadn't seen each other in the past 2 to 3 years, her every move, frown, and smile had long been deeply imprinted in his mind. He could recognize her every movement and back. Seeing her following behind Yang Yong, the distance between them was less than 3 steps apart. His face immediately darkened, and he felt as if a jar of vinegar had been knocked over in his heart, causing him to fume with sourness. This woman, instead of cultivating properly over there, she actually snuck over here. He had clearly told her that she couldn't come here unless she was a nascent soul cultivator. Furthermore, she was the one who had mentioned the 10-year promise. She actually snuck over. At this moment, he had completely forgotten that when he had suffered from the backlash of his strength, he had taken advantage of the fact that his body had shrunk due to the loss of his cultivation method to sneak back to see her. Furthermore, he had taken advantage of her quite a bit. Right now, his eyes seemed to be on fire as he stared at the 2 people below. Because the 2 of them had already approached the pavilion, he couldn't hear what they were saying due to the distance, and he couldn't see the expressions on their faces due to the angle. He only knew that the distance between the 2 of them had been shortened again. At this moment, he could not help but let his imagination run wild. What was Yang Yong talking to her about? How could Hui Lang and the others not know that Fengzhou is here? And Yang Yong, as a housekeeper, why did he go to the pavilion with her, who was wearing a servant's uniform? What was he trying to do? Just as he was letting his imagination run wild, there was another scene in the pavilion. Sit. Yang Yong gestured for him to sit. Fengzhou did not stand on ceremony and sat down. Who are you? He asked directly. His voice was as gentle as ever, without the slightest hint of fierceness. However, Fengjiu knew that this Yang Yong was not as gentle and harmless as he appeared on the surface. The more he was like this, the more shrewd and powerful he was. To be able to become a housekeeper, you are indeed not a simple person. She rested her chin on one hand and smiled. Actually, you don't have to ask me who I am. Because even if I told you, I don't think you would believe me. Chapter 1246. Hearing this, Fengjiu's eyes began to spin and a glint flashed across her eyes. She stared at the person in front of her and smiled, I'm here to look for your master. Yang Yong nodded, I know you're here to look for my master, but do you know him? Why are you looking for him? It was because the youth in front of him did not have any killing intent, or at least, he did not sense any malicious intent from him. That was why he did not order his men to kill him, but instead brought him here to question him. I know him. If you don't, why are you looking for him? I wanted to give him a surprise, but who knew that your place would be so tightly guarded? I've been here for several days and I haven't even seen him once. Speaking to this point, she could not help but sigh. You still haven't told me, who are you? He asked again. Me. My name is Fengjiu. She said with a smile, looking at his stunned expression with satisfaction. You're the ghost doctor. The ghost doctor Fengjiu, as one of his master's trusted aides, naturally knew of this person. Furthermore, this was a woman, and one that his master liked. But this youth in front of him was a woman. No need to look, I'm a woman. Here, let me show you this. She propped up her chin with one hand and took out a token with the other. Yanling. That token was the master's Yanling, a token that could mobilize the Yanling's forces. He never thought that his master would give this to her. From the looks of it, she was indeed the ghost Dr. Fengjiu. At this moment, he could not help but feel a lingering fear. It was a good thing that he did not immediately send people to kill her, otherwise, even if he died 100 times, he would not be able to atone for his sins. His gaze fell on her face and asked, You've changed your appearance. Not really, I've just done a little. She put away the Yanling, then smiled at him and said in a negotiating tone, Housekeeper, please don't expose me. I'm having fun. Hearing this, Yang Yong couldn't help but laugh, You're too reckless. If you want to see Master, you just have to take out the Yen decree and no one will stop you. If something happens to you and you're treated as a spy or an assassin, the consequences will be very serious. Also, I really don't see what's so fun about this. He shook his head and looked at her servant's uniform. He smiled and said, Is it fun to be a servant? A manservant like you won't be able to get close to the master. So. That's why I cooperated and told you my identity. Otherwise, I would have gone to Hui Lang a long time ago. But, that guy isn't as smart as you. Speaking of her, she laughed again, Anyway, I won't do anything to your master. Just pretend that you don't know. Don't expose me to him, or else, hee. Alright. I was originally worried that you might be a spy or an assassin, so I tested you. Since you're the ghost Dr. Fengjiu, I naturally won't say anything else. At this point, he looked at her and said, Perhaps you don't know, but Master said to us, his trusted aides, that you will be our future mistress, so we have to treat you with the same respect as we treat him. So, I will do as you say. Hearing this, Fengjiu was slightly surprised. Looking at his serious expression and hearing his words, her heart couldn't help but tremble. He actually said that. This meant that he had decided on her in this life. Chapter 1247. Seeing this, Yang Yong smiled and said, I heard Hui Lang and the others say that Ren Xiang couldn't find the ghost doctor's whereabouts and didn't even know where the ghost doctor went. Also, I heard Master mention that the ghost doctor has a 10-year agreement with Master. Also, she can't come here if she hasn't reached the nascent soul stage. That's right. The 10-year agreement is a test for your master. She smiled lightly, I snuck in this time to see if he's hugging women behind my back when I wasn't around. But after entering this place, there isn't even a single woman in the inner courtyard. Wouldn't this cause an imbalance of yin and yang? Hearing this, even Yang Yong couldn't help but be stunned. He looked at the person in front of him who had a sly look in her eyes and couldn't help but laugh softly. You're really thinking too much. Master has never been close to women. There are servant girls outside the residence, but there aren't any in the inner courtyard. The ones who are ordered around are usually servants. I'm afraid your sudden inspection will be disappointing. Nonsense, if I'm not disappointed, then should I be pleasantly surprised to see him hugging a woman? She rolled her eyes speechlessly and said, I came here to do something, but it just so happens that there are still a few days left, so I came to see him first. That's right, has his cold poison really been cured? Last time I heard Ren Xiang and Hui Lang say that it's been cured. How was it cured? I haven't even found a way to cure his cold poison yet. It's been cured. Actually, Master's cultivation method is of the utmost yang, or else he wouldn't have been able to suppress that 1,000-year-old cold poison after so many years. The reason he couldn't cure it before was because Master's cultivation method wasn't complete. And during that time, those powers were also targeting Master. There was one time when Master beat them at their own game and made them think that they had succeeded, so he took the opportunity to go into seclusion. Later on, when Master's cultivation was complete, he used the cultivation method in his body to force out the cold poison. However, because of this, he lost quite a bit of his cultivation method, and at that time. At this point, he paused and glanced at her. He only smiled and didn't continue speaking. What happened at that time? Feng Jiu was listening, and seeing that he didn't continue, he couldn't help but feel strange. It's all in the past, there's no need to talk about it. That's right, you said that you have something to do here. Do you need my help? He changed the topic, thinking that it was better not to talk about how his master had shrunk due to the loss of his cultivation method. I don't need your help, but I have to stay here for a few months. After a few months, I still have to deal with my own matters. Once I leave, I probably won't be able to find him for a while. I won't be staying in the Imperial City for long, so if he doesn't recognize me, there's no need to talk about me coming here. All right. He nodded. If there's anything I can help with, just let me know. I still have people who can help. Yes, I know. She smiled and then asked curiously, I heard that you are the second son of a big family. But why did he come here to be his butler? Does your family agree? Yang Yong smiled warmly. I'm the second son, so there's no need for me to take over the family. My clansmen naturally won't object. Furthermore, it's good to be by Master's side. I've learned quite a few things here. Being a butler in his residence may not necessarily be worse than being the head of the family outside. Feng Jiu nodded. That's true. After all, his status is not ordinary. You're both a butler and a trusted aide, so you won't lose out to being the head of the family outside. Chapter 1248. No need, the place I'm living in now is quite good. Moreover, special treatment can't be hidden in this manner, so don't give me too much preferential treatment. She waved her hand and stood up. If there's nothing else, I'm going back to sweep the floor. As she spoke, she walked out of the pavilion. As if she thought of something, she turned around and asked, That's right, how come I don't see your master? Master should be in the attic, the tallest building in the manor. He walked out and pointed in the direction of the attic. The moment Feng Jiu walked out, Xianyuan Mose, who had been watching from the window, quickly took a step back and hid to the side, not letting them notice that he had been watching here for more than an hour. What were these two talking about? They actually chatted for so long. Xianyuan Mose leaned against the wall and thought for a while. When he saw the two leave through the crack, he turned around and walked out. Seeing the two figures leave, his deep eyes flashed. After pausing in the attic for a while, he walked down. His heart was happy to see her again after more than 2 years, but he was also angry. He was angry that she didn't listen to him and wait until she entered the nascent soul stage before coming. If something happened here and he wasn't by her side, what should he do? However, this anger couldn't compare to the joy and excitement in his heart. Even if he had a stern and dignified face, even if he tried his best to keep a cold face, his slightly pursed lips couldn't hide his good mood. Since she sneaked in and didn't come to find him, then he would go find her. Since she wanted to play, he would play with her. He wanted to see who would be the first to reveal their identity. When he arrived downstairs, Xianyuan Mose walked towards the main courtyard. He originally thought that Fengjiu, who had left the pavilion, would be sweeping the floor in front of the main courtyard, but who would have thought that not even half a shadow could be seen. "Master, what are you doing here?" Hui Lang walked over from behind. Seeing his master standing there with his hands behind his back and looking around, he couldn't help but ask curiously. He also looked around, but didn't see anything. When Xianyuan Mose heard his words, he turned around to look at him, then walked into the courtyard. When he reached the courtyard, he did not return to his room. Instead, he sat down at the table in the courtyard. When Hui Lang saw this, he signaled the servant in the courtyard to serve the meal. At the same time, he exchanged glances with Hui Lang. The two of them gestured for the servant to come forward and ask what was going on. In the end, Ying Yi had no choice but to step forward and ask, "Master, what's wrong? Why did he look so listless this early in the morning? Did you not rest well?" Xianyuan Mose didn't say anything. He just tapped the table lightly with one hand while thinking about how to get her to his side. It wasn't until he saw a lot of food and desserts on the table that an idea flashed through his mind. "Hui Lang, go find a servant to taste the food," he said with a straight face. He sat upright and didn't move his chopsticks. Hearing this, Hui Lang was stunned for a moment. "Taste the food? I can taste the food." As he spoke, he walked forward and rolled up his sleeves to pick up the food with his chopsticks. He opened his mouth and was about to put the food into his mouth. Unexpectedly, at this time, a familiar and dignified cold voice sounded. "Go away." Xianyuan Mose glanced at him with disdain. "Go find a servant. In the future, he will be responsible for this monarch's 3 meals a day," he ordered in a deep voice. Chapter 1249. Not long after, Hui Lang came in with a servant. "Master, how is he?" Xianyuan Mose looked up and frowned. "Change it." "Yes." He was surprised, but he still responded and went out to look for it. "Master, how is this?" Hui Lang came in with another servant. "Change it again." This time, even Ying Yi was slightly surprised. He looked at the manservant and then looked at his master, feeling strange in his heart. His master usually didn't ask people to taste his food. Why was he acting strangely today? "Servant?" he thought to himself, and a thought flashed through his mind. Could it be the new servant? A new servant came to the inner courtyard recently, and he was transferred in by Yang Yong. Was his master looking for him? Therefore, when Hui Lang was about to go out to search again, he said, "I'll go look for him." Then, under Hui Lang's astonished gaze, he left with the servant. After leaving the main courtyard, he asked where the new servant went. "Guard Ying, the new servant is called Shaoli. It's mealtime now, so I think he went to the kitchen," a guard said. "Yes, he should be in the kitchen. This guy always goes to the kitchen at the right time. If we can't find him now, he must be in the kitchen," another guard beside him said. Hearing this, Ying Yi was slightly surprised, but still went to the kitchen. It was mealtime now. When he came to the kitchen, several guards and a servant were lining up to get food. The thin figure was among them. Seeing the figure standing behind the guards and yawning in boredom, he walked up and came to the person's side. "Guard Ying." The people who saw him saluted. You, come with me. Ah. Me. It's almost time to eat, and you're still leaving. Fengjiu was a little dissatisfied. She was hungry. Let's go, don't talk nonsense. Ing Yi said and walked back. Seeing this, Fengjiu could only follow him. However, when she followed him to the outside of the main courtyard, she finally saw that familiar black figure, and she could not help but feel excited. Now you see it, right? Would he recognize her? The makeup on her face had been processed, and even she couldn't find any sense of familiarity. Master, is this okay? This servant is new. His name is Shaoli, Ing Yi said, motioning for Fengjiu to come forward. Shaoli Zi greets master. Fengjiu quickly stepped forward and bowed respectfully. She lowered her voice, which was different from her usual voice. Xianyuan Mose looked up. The face in front of him was unfamiliar. The voice was unfamiliar. However, he could tell at a glance that it was her. The corners of his lips curled up imperceptibly. Perhaps even she herself didn't notice that her eyes gave people a different feeling. He answered and looked away. He didn't say anything else. What? Fengjiu was startled and looked at Ing Yi. From today onwards, you will help master taste the food. You have to taste everything that master wants to eat first. After confirming that it's not poisonous, you can let master eat it. Ing Yi stood at the side and said. Ah. Taste the food? Really? Her eyes lit up and her gaze fell on the exquisite food on the table. There weren't many things on the table, but one set was very appetizing. Chapter 1250. Looking at her gluttonous face, Xianyuan Mose almost couldn't hold back his laughter. He knew that she liked good food and eating, and since she had become a servant here, she probably wouldn't be able to eat anything good. Since he had transferred her to his side, it was only natural that he let her eat something good. Moreover, he didn't notice it from afar, but now that he looked closer, he found that she had lost a lot of weight. Could it be that she hadn't eaten well while running around outside? Seeing her body so thin, he couldn't help but feel his heart ache. In his heart, he secretly decided that he must take this opportunity to fatten her up. Eat. He gestured. Okay. She replied with a smile, even her eyes turned into crescents. Standing by the table, she picked up a pair of chopsticks and an empty plate, and was about to pick up a piece of meat to eat when she heard that voice again. Sit down and eat. Hearing this, even Ing Yi and Hui Lang were surprised. The two of them couldn't help but look at each other, then at their master, then at the servant. They couldn't see what this servant had that could make their master treat him so differently. Yes. Fengjiu didn't stand on ceremony with him. After responding, she sat down at the table and picked up a piece of meat to eat. She picked up a piece from each plate and tasted it before pushing it in front of Xianyuan Mose. The two of you can leave. Xianyuan Mose glanced at the two beside him. Yes. The two of them responded, bowed, and left. When they were outside, Hui Lang looked at Ing Yi strangely and asked, how did you know that master was looking for this servant? This servant doesn't look like anything special. Ing Yi glanced at him and said, these few days, only one servant came to the inner courtyard. Master's food has always been tested by someone. Now that he asked someone to taste it, it's obvious that it's not just a taste test. There must be something wrong with this person. As he said that, he paused for a moment, then walked away. Hey, where are you going? Hui Lang asked. I'm going to ask Yang Yong. He was the one who brought this person in, so he should know the details. Hearing this, Hui Lang hurriedly followed, I'll go with you. In the courtyard, Xianyuan Mose watched her eat. Seeing that her eyes lit up when she saw the food, and then looking at her happy face while eating, he couldn't help but have a gentle smile in his eyes. This woman, couldn't she just tell him that she was here? She had to make herself like this, and couldn't even eat a good meal. You're called Shaoli? He adjusted his expression and asked in a low and cold voice. Yes, I'm a distant nephew from the outer courtyard. Feng Jiu said and moved a plate of food in front of him. Master, this is good. It tastes good. Yup. To eat to eat tea eats as eat eats eat tes eat. Hearing this, she swallowed her saliva and smiled embarrassedly. I've already tried all these. If I eat any more, I'll finish all the food on your table. Ben Jun can't eat that much, eat. If you don't eat, you'll throw it all away later. Hearing this, her expression had a trace of strangeness. Master, you don't treat the servants so well. This man, could it be that he recognized her? Otherwise, why would he keep asking her to eat? Chapter 1251. No need, no need. I'll take care of such a good errand. She picked up her chopsticks again. Seeing this, Xianyuan Mose didn't say anything else and quietly ate with her. After the meal, he had the servants clear away the things on the table, then ordered, from today onwards, you will follow by my side. Ah. She looked at him in astonishment, but I don't know how to do anything. Follow by my side and listen to my orders. If you don't know how to do it, I won't let you do it. Saying this, he stood up and said, also, move into my main courtyard. There's a room over there that's empty. From today onwards, all of my personal affairs will be handled by you. Seeing her blinking and staring blankly at him, he pulled a long face and said in a deep voice, do it well. If you do it well, I'll reward you. If you don't, you'll be punished. What are you still standing there for? Why aren't you going? Oh, okay. She replied in a daze, then turned and walked out. As she walked, she thought about it and felt that something was wrong. At the same time, on the other side, Hui Lang and Ing Yi found Yang Yong in the front courtyard, who was giving orders to the servants. Old Yang, where did that servant come from? Hui Lang walked up and patted him on the shoulder. What's wrong? Yang Yong asked with a smile, did he offend you? No, but it's very strange. I don't know what's wrong with Master today. He actually said that he wanted to find someone to taste his food. You also know that his food is absolutely safe. Today, he suddenly wanted us to find a servant to taste his food. If he wanted to find a servant, then so be it. But I found a few, but none of them caught Master's eye. It was Ing Yi who went to find Little Li, who just entered the inner courtyard, and Master let him stay. At this point, Hui Lang angrily said, and Master actually let him sit and eat. We don't have this kind of treatment. Hearing this, Yang Yong's eyes moved slightly and he smiled, we don't need to guess what Master does. He has his reasons. No, who is that boy? Where did you find him? He's the nephew of the outer courtyard steward. I saw that he was honest and reliable, so I arranged for him to go in. Don't worry. This person will be fine. How is there no problem? From what I see, Master's attitude towards him is not quite right. Although that brat has delicate features and an honest look, I feel that he is a slippery person with one look. He is definitely not simple. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to mingle with Master in just a few days. As soon as he finished speaking, he was stunned and slapped his thigh. I know. This kid must be a spy who had snuck in. No, I have to tell Master. What are you doing? Ing Yi pulled him back and glanced at him. Didn't you hear Yang Yong say that there's nothing wrong with this person? Can a problematic person be transferred to the inner court? But. No buts. Since he said there's no problem, then there must be no problem. Right, Yang Yong? Ing Yi looked at him and asked. Hearing this, Yang Yong smiled warmly and nodded, don't worry. I've investigated this person. There's really no problem with him. Moreover, you have to believe in Master. Master has his own reasons for doing things. If he can trust someone, we can naturally trust him too. Chapter 1252. Seeing him say this, Yi didn't ask any more questions. This fox, if he didn't say anything, they wouldn't be able to get anything out of him. And it was obvious that he knew about this person's background, but didn't plan on telling them, so they could only rely on themselves to find out. But it could be seen that even if this person had a problem, he wasn't dangerous. Otherwise, if he was a threat to Master, Yang Yong wouldn't have transferred him to the inner courtyard. On the other side, Fengjiu, who had returned to the outer courtyard to pack her things, entered the servants' quarters in the outer courtyard. Only then did she remember that she didn't have anything to pack here. There were only 2 sets of servants' clothes and some toiletries, and that was it. After she simply put away those things, she sat cross-legged on the bed and propped up her chin with one hand as she thought. Did this Shenyuan Mose recognize her or not? If he recognized her, he would probably recognize her, right? He wouldn't say anything about punishment, so did that mean he really didn't recognize her and just found her pleasing to the eye? Pleasing to the eye. She felt it was strange and took out a mirror from her space to look at it. At most, it was a delicate and pretty little brother. This kind of person could be found all over the streets. Dinyo. Dinyo. The voice from outside made her come back to her senses. She put the mirror into her space, then carried her things out of bed and walked out. Uncle. Why are you here? It was that old man. Uncle, I heard that after you were transferred to the inner courtyard, you were personally transferred to Master's side to serve him. Is that true? The old man said excitedly. Seeing the things in her hands, he couldn't help but smile from his old face. You're promising, you're promising. You've only been here for a few days and you've already caught Master's eye. You have to do a good job and don't let Master's trust in you down. Uncle, don't worry, I'll do a good job. She smiled and nodded in response. Good, 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 then you can go. Uncle heard that you came back to pack your things and will be living in the inner courtyard in the future, so I came to take a look. The old man was very happy and his voice was full of energy. All right, then I'll leave first. Master said that he wanted me to serve him closely, in case he can't find me when he comes looking for me. She put the packed bundle on her shoulder and walked into the inner courtyard under the old man's gratified gaze. Hey, stop right there. Before he could enter the inner courtyard, he was called out. She turned around and looked at Hui Lang and Ing Yi who were walking towards her. She smiled and saluted, Guard Captain, Ing Yi. Where are you going with this bag on your back? Hui Lang asked, staring at the skinny young man in front of him. Hearing this, Fengjiu grinned. Master asked me to be his personal attendant and to manage the affairs around him. He also asked me to move to his main courtyard, so I came back to pack my things. Hearing this, Hui Lang glared at him. Master asked you to serve him personally. You even have to move to the main courtyard. Did the sun rise from the west? This was too strange. When Ing Yi heard this, his heart skipped a beat. He stared at the skinny young man in front of him. This young man didn't look outstanding. However, he had been by his master's side for many years. There was only one person who could make his master do such strange things. Looking at the person in front of him, he already had an answer in his heart. That's right, other than her, who else could make his master do this? Only she could make Yang Yong feel at ease leaving her by his master's side. Chapter 1253. If there's nothing else, I'll go in first. She bowed and walked inside. Hey, you. Hui Lang still wanted to say something, but was stopped by Ing Yi. What are you doing? At least let me ask clearly. He glared at Ing Yi and said, don't you think that master is too strange? Where did this kid come from? How many days has it been since he entered the mansion? Master has arranged for him to go to the main courtyard. And to personally serve him? There must be a problem. I already think there's no problem. You're the only one who has a problem. Ing Yi said and walked inside. After a few steps, he paused and looked back at Hui Lang, who was still scratching his head, and reminded him, "You'd better not provoke him. Anyway, it's fine as long as you know that he's not a spy or an assassin. Don't cry when the time comes." Ha! What a joke, I'll suffer in the hands of a servant. He sneered and didn't take it seriously. Ing Yi shook his head and walked away. Not only Grey Wolf, but also the guards and secret guards in the mansion, as well as the servants, couldn't figure out why this manservant was transferred to the side by the master after only a few days. Obviously, he looked like an ordinary young man. How did he catch the master's eye? However, even though they had doubts in their hearts, they did not ask. They only paid more attention to the manservant called Xiao Li Zi on normal days. Early in the morning, Feng Jiu yawned and carried a basin of water to Xianyuan Mo's room. Yesterday evening, he told her that he would go to the palace this morning, so she had to get up early tomorrow morning to serve him. Therefore, although she was still sleepy, she got up and washed her face to wake up. Then, she brought the basin of water to him. "Master." She put the basin of water on the basin and walked into the room. She saw that the bed was covered by a gauze curtain. She could only vaguely see a person sleeping under the quilt. She walked forward with light steps. When she lifted the bed curtain, a pair of hands suddenly reached out and grabbed her, pulling her into the room without warning. Ah! She let out a low cry and threw herself onto the bed, pressing down on Xianyuan Mo's body. Her shocked gaze met his deep and dark eyes. Those dark eyes were like a bottomless abyss that she couldn't see the bottom of. It was as if her entire body had been sucked into it. On the big bed, two figures were lying on top of each other, separated only by a blanket. Xianyuan Mo grabbed her hand with one hand, then wrapped his other hand around her waist and pressed her down, not allowing her to leave. Their eyes met, and an ambiguous aura filled the air. Hee, you really recognized me? She smiled sheepishly. If she was only suspicious before, she was 100% sure now. She didn't know that this domineering and cold man would pull a stranger onto his bed. Back then, she had also suffered a lot at his hands. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mo's lips curled up. His deep voice was magnetic, and there was a trace of laziness in it. Is this a spot check? Why didn't you tell me you were coming here? I can send someone to pick you up. He hugged her like this, looking at the red lips in front of him. His throat moved slightly, and he felt a surge of fire in his lower abdomen. There was an impulse in his body. Chapter 1254. Originally, I didn't want to come so early. Moreover, I was thinking of not seeing you for 10 years. She smiled and said, however, it just so happens that I have some things to take care of here, so I came here in advance. I originally wanted to secretly see if you were living a carefree life, but who would have thought that I would be discovered by your housekeeper a few days after I came here. Speaking of which, this Yang Yong is really not bad. He's much more reliable than Hui Lang. She couldn't help but praise. However, when he heard this, Xianyuan Mo's jealousy surged. Yang Yong is not bad? How is he not bad? Is he good-looking? Or is he outstanding? Both. This person is good-looking and has a calm and reserved personality, but he also has the gentle and refined aura of a noble young master. Moreover, his ability to handle matters and his vigilance is good. I heard that this person is really from an aristocratic family. It's really unexpected that he would become your housekeeper. She looked at the person under her and smiled. I really couldn't tell that your methods of winning people over are top-notch. This kind of person is even willing to be your housekeeper. Are you praising me? Or are you praising him? His words were filled with jealousy. I'm praising him, ha ha ha. Feng Jiu laughed. He coldly snorted and said, you're itching for a beating. The hand around her waist pinched her waist. Because he didn't use much strength, it made her feel itchy and goosebumps appeared all over her body. "Ah!" She cried out in a low voice and struggled to free her hand. She pressed on his chest and jumped up, quickly retreating out of the bed curtain. When she stood up straight, she couldn't help but rub her waist as she shouted, "Didn't you say you were going to the palace? Hurry up and get up." Xianyuan Mose rested on the bed for a while. He took a deep breath and gently exhaled. After suppressing the heat in his body, he got up. Seeing that she was standing 3 steps away from the bed, he couldn't help but laugh. "Why are you standing so far away? Didn't you want to help me wash up? I've already brought you water. Here, I put it there." She smiled and said, "I'll find you clothes. Which one do you want to wear?" As she spoke, she opened his wardrobe and saw that it was all black. She couldn't help but twitch her mouth. "It's all black." Thinking about it, she didn't seem to have seen him wear any other colors. But then again, black was the color that best reflected his domineering aura. "Just pick any set. They're all about the same." Xianyuan Mose walked to the side to wash up as he spoke. Not long after, he returned to the bed and reached out to put on the black robe she had taken out. "You should change your clothes too. I'll take you into the palace to have a look." "Enter the palace?" She was slightly startled. "Let's not, shall we? If I go in, won't I be causing trouble for you? I'll wait for you in the mansion. Don't worry, I won't leave." She smiled. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose also showed a smile. While letting her help him fasten his belt and enjoying her considerate service, he said, "You haven't been here before, right? I'll take you around the palace. The Xianyuan Imperial Palace is much bigger than yours." As he spoke, he looked at her. Seeing that she was wearing the servant's clothes, he said, "Change back to women's clothes. No one will dare to do anything to you here. Since you're here, I'll take you to see my imperial father." "No." Chapter 1255. Seeing this, he nodded his head, "All right. Since that's the case, you wait for me in the mansion and we'll eat lunch together." As he spoke, he handed a jade tablet to her. "Take this. You can mobilize anyone in the mansion. You're giving me another token. I don't even have enough tokens to use." She had a lot of tokens in her space, from all kinds of forces. Now that he handed her another one, she didn't want to take it. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose curled his lips and put the jade tablet in her hand. "This is the mansion's jade tablet. Seeing this jade tablet is like seeing me." She looked at the jade tablet, and her eyes turned. She asked with a smile, "Can I do anything with this?" Seeing this, he slightly raised his eyebrows. "What do you want to do?" "Hui Lang asked me to scrub the toilet 2 days ago." "Humph. He's got guts. He dares to ask you to scrub the toilet. How do you want to deal with him?" "Just take this jade tablet and order someone." He straightened his collar and said, "With this jade tablet, you can walk sideways in this mansion." "All right, then I'll have someone prepare a carriage for you. Take advantage of this time to eat breakfast before going out." She smiled and nodded her head. She walked out and ordered someone to prepare a carriage. She also had someone bring breakfast and put it in the courtyard. Xianyuan Mose walked out and sat down at the table in the courtyard. He motioned for her to sit down and eat with him. Seeing this, the shadow guards in the courtyard couldn't help but secretly look at that figure. "Master." Ing Yi and Hui Lang came to the courtyard and respectfully bowed. Seeing that figure sitting next to Master, Ing Yi's expression was normal, but Hui Lang glared at him, somewhat angry. Why could this boy accompany Master to eat? Really made him want to beat him up. After Xianyuan Mose ate a bit, he put down his chopsticks and said to Fengjiu, "Eat slowly. I'll go out first." After saying this, he said to the 2 people beside him, Ying Yi, follow Ben Jun to the palace. Hui Lang, stay. Yes. Ying Yi responded, and when he got up and walked out, he followed behind him. Hui Lang saw that the young man was still sitting there eating even after his master had left. He couldn't help but step forward and heavily slap the table. Young man. Didn't you see that master had left? Why are you still sitting here eating? Are you the master, or is the master the master? I don't know what's wrong with master, he actually wants this kid to eat slowly. He wasn't afraid that this brat would go overboard. After Fengjiu finished the last pastry, he put down his chopsticks and said, Captain, just now master told me to scrub the toilets. You have to scrub 100 toilets, otherwise. Who are you trying to fool? Master wants me to scrub the toilet. A few days ago, master punished me. I didn't do anything wrong these 2 days. How could master say something like that? What's more, it should be master who said it, not a brat like you. Before he finished speaking, he saw a jade pendant dangling in the young man's hand. He immediately swallowed the rest of his words. He widened his eyes and asked, You stole master's jade pendant? Fengjiu rolled his eyes, Who is master? Do you think I can steal from him? He gave this to me and said that if you don't believe me, you can take out this jade pendant. This, how is this possible? Chapter 1256. Fengjiu looked at him and chuckled. She waved the jade pendant in her hand. Don't worry about how you got here. Hurry up and go wash the bucket. Hearing this, Hui Lang was stunned for a moment before he reacted. It's you. You're targeting me, right? He remembered that he had asked her to wash the toilet a few days ago, but she didn't manage to do it in the end. Guard captain, you're really thinking too much. I'm just a manservant. How can I do that? Master left this message before he left. I don't know what's going on. She looked innocent and didn't admit it. It really wasn't you. Thinking about it, how could the master punish him because of a new servant? However, he didn't do anything wrong recently. Yes, it's not me. She said without blushing or panting. Then let's make a deal. Can you? No. She didn't wait for him to finish and refused. You should hurry up and wash the toilet. Otherwise, you'll be in trouble when master comes back. As she said this, she stood up and said, I still have to water the flowers. I'll leave first. Looking at the figure leaving the courtyard, Hui Lang frowned and scratched his head. He asked the hidden guard in the dark, did master really say that? It was quiet. No one spoke. He couldn't help but stare at a certain place. I'm asking you. Why are you pretending to be mute? The hidden guard in that place was helpless. He could only say, Hui Lang, just do as he says. The jade pendant is in your hand. You can't do anything wrong. Hearing this, Hui Lang sighed and walked out. He thought, should I find someone to wash the toilet before master comes back? However, this thought was extinguished as soon as it appeared. It was better to do it honestly. On the other side, in the main hall of the imperial palace, a middle-aged man wearing casual clothes was sitting on the main seat. He was emitting a powerful pressure and the aura of a superior. He looked at the black-clothed figure standing below him. He said in a deep voice, in a few days, the Qishui dynasty's crown prince and third princess will come. You'll be in charge of receiving them. The deep and dignified voice paused for a moment before continuing, the Qishui dynasty wants to mend relations with us. This third princess is the #1 beauty of the Qishui dynasty. She's also very talented. You should seize this opportunity. If the two countries can form an alliance through marriage, it will be very beneficial for us. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mo's, Xianyuan dynasty, why would we need to expand our country through marriage? If we want to expand our territory, we should expand it. But if this princess wants to form a marriage alliance, We haven't even seen her yet. How can we let it go? The monarch on the main seat said in a deep voice. He stared at his son and said, I know you have women you like in the inferior countries. However, you should know that as the crown prince of one of the 8 great empires, the women who can stand by your side must be extraordinary. Even if there were 10 women from the inferior countries, they wouldn't be worthy of your status. He paused for a moment. Seeing that his son pursed his lips and didn't say anything, the monarch continued, if you really like her, then take her in as a bed warmer. In the future, as the monarch of a country, you can choose from 3,000 beauties in your harem. It's not a big deal to take in a woman. Hearing this, he looked up at his father and didn't say much. He only said, Father, if there's nothing else, then I'll go back first. Chapter 1257. Give me a little more time. One day, I will become so strong that no one will dare to look down on me. Strong enough to stand by your side and look down on the world with you. Leaving the palace, Xianyuan Moza's expression was not too good. His face was dark, and the change in his aura caused the entire carriage to be shrouded in an oppressive aura. He leaned against the seat and slowly closed his eyes to adjust his breathing. After a while, he opened his eyes again. This time, the aura on his body had calmed down. The crown prince and 3rd princess of Qishui province were coming. And from what he heard, his imperial father wanted him to marry the crown prince of Qishui province. If the woman in his residence found out about this, he would probably be in deep trouble. He thought about it all the way until they reached the main gate. After getting off the carriage, he went straight to the main courtyard. In the end, he couldn't find anyone in the main courtyard. After asking around, he found out that she had gone to the kitchen. Call her back. As he spoke, Ying Yi, who was following behind him, responded. He left the courtyard and went to the kitchen to find her. In his heart, he was thinking, if the ghost doctor found out about this, what would she do? Moreover, this was too much of a coincidence. Of all times, the ghost doctor had to come at this time. When he thought about how the crown prince and 3rd princess of Qishui province were coming to their residence, he felt that the days would be very chaotic. Fengjiu was indeed in the kitchen. Because she had nothing to do, she came to the kitchen to chat with the kitchen maids. She also had something to eat. But just as she was chatting, she heard Ying Yi's voice. Shaoli, master wants you to go back. She turned around and saw Ying Yi walking over from not far away. Hearing his words, she asked, he's back. As she spoke, she had already gotten up and walked out. Seeing this, Ying Yi also walked behind her. Thinking that he hadn't seen Hui Lang yet, he couldn't help but feel that it was strange. He planned to go take a look later. When he arrived at the main courtyard, he saw that Xianyuan Moz was not in the courtyard, but in the room. He walked in. Ying Yi stopped outside the courtyard and looked at the closed door. His eyes moved slightly, and he turned to leave. What happened? When Fengjiu came into the room, he saw the person sitting at the table with a dark face. He couldn't help but sit down in front of him and pour him a glass of water. Xianyuan Moz looked at her and said, in a few days, there may be guests coming to the mansion. You're like this when there's a guest. Are you familiar with each other? She raised her eyebrows in a teasing manner. The Qishui dynasty is also one of the 8 great empires. It's the closest to our Xianyuan dynasty. This time, it's their crown prince and the 3rd princess. My father also ordered us to treat them well. If there was anyone in the Xianyuan empire who could suppress him, then that person was undoubtedly his father. Yi Fuqian didn't know what level his father's strength had reached. He only knew that his father was very strong, much stronger than him. Then treat them well. Or. She glanced at him and said with a smile, are you afraid that I'll feel uncomfortable here? Don't worry, I'm not such a narrow-minded person. Hearing this, he reached out and held her in his arms to sit down. my father intends to marry the Qishui dynasty. But don't worry, I won't agree. I always make my own decisions and solve my own problems. Even if that person is my father, he can't make decisions for me. Chapter 1258. That's right, in this world, the strong are the king, everything is decided by strength. He said, looking at her in his arms, and I believe that your future achievements will be more extraordinary than mine. Hearing this, Feng Zhou chuckled, you have so much confidence in me. You are the woman I like, if I don't have confidence in you, then who do I have confidence in? He chuckled and wrapped his arms around her waist. He leaned his head on her shoulder and said, all right, let's not talk about those things. Tell me about what happened after you brought those brats into the Hell Mountain range. You also know about this matter. It seems that Ren Xiang's intelligence is good. She chuckled and said, wasn't I a student in a 2-star academy? I don't know what happened, but I made a mess of their Xing domain, so. In the room, Feng Zhou told her about what happened there, the things that he didn't know about. In the evening, after dinner, Xianyuan Mose took her out to play, and did not return until late at night. Because Xianyuan Mose took her with him wherever he went, the only thing missing was sleeping on the same bed. Although the guards and shadow guards in the manor didn't say anything, they were already starting to get curious. When Hui Lang, who had been washing the toilet for a few days, came back, he saw his master helping the boy with the food. He was so shocked that his jaw almost fell to the ground, and he quickly retreated to find Ying Yi. I was just about to go to master's place, but I saw master helping the boy with the food. Ying Yi, do you think master is okay? Don't make a fuss, don't look at what you shouldn't look at, even if you look at it, don't open your mouth. Ying Yi said, standing not far from the main courtyard with his arms crossed. But. No buts, if you are too idle, go pull the grass, don't always follow me around. Hearing this, Hui Lang snorted, who follows you around? I just want to ask, do you think I like to stay by your side? As he spoke, he saw Yang Yong coming from not far away, and seeing him, he was surprised. Why is this guy here? What are the two of you doing here? Yang Yong walked over and asked. The two of us are idle people, unlike a busy person like you. We haven't seen each other for a few days. However, why did you come to Master's place today? Is there something you need from Master? Grey Wolf approached and asked. It's not that I'm looking for Master, I just have something to report. He smiled warmly and looked towards the main courtyard. He saw that the two people inside were eating, so he didn't go in to disturb them. Instead, he went under the tree to chat with them. I heard that Master is stuck with this brat every day. Hui Lang curled his lips. He looks like a gigolo. I don't know what medicine he gave Master to make Master treat him so well. Hearing this, Yang Yong paused for a moment, then chuckled softly, Hui Lang, actually, you should be training guards. As for the main brain, it was only enough to train the manor's guards or do things according to orders. If there was something that really required him to use his brain, he would definitely mess it up. Although I am the head of the guards, and these guards are under my command, but for the matter of training guards, it is a waste of talent to let me go. Ying Yi and Yang Yong couldn't help but laugh when they heard this. This idiot. That's true, letting you wash the toilet is a waste of talent. Yang Yong couldn't help but tease. Chapter 1259. Hearing this, the two of them couldn't help but chuckle. As the laughter spread, the two people who had finished eating walked out together. Feng Zhou, who was beside Xianyuan Mose, saw Yang Yong and called out with a smile, housekeeper. Xianyuan Mose saw this and thought of how she had praised Yang Yong for not only being handsome, but also having a gentle personality. Seeing her smile when she saw Yang Yong, Xianyuan Mose's face couldn't help but darken. He glared at Yang Yong with hostility. Why have you come? Don't you have anything to do in the outer court? Hearing his master's angry words, Yang Yong smiled. "Master, I came to tell you that the people from the Qishui Empire have already entered the palace. Presumably, the king will send someone to summon you soon." Xianyuan Mo's frowned. "It's just the crown prince and young master of the Qishui Empire. Do I need to personally go and greet them? For this matter, you and Grey Wolf can go to the palace to pick him up." Yang Yong nodded with a smile. "Yes." He looked at Hui Lang and signaled for him to leave. Only then did the two of them leave together. "Is it all right to just let the two of them go?" Feng Jiu asked. After all, they were the crown prince and princess of an empire. You don't know this. Although the 8 great empires exist as equals, the strongest is our Xianyuan Empire. Not only that, but my prestige in the 8 great empires is incomparable to that of the other princes and princes. Allowing them to stay in my residence is already giving them a lot of face. Feng Jiu was slightly surprised by Xianyuan Mo's words, but also felt relieved. That's right, he was just rather low-key when he went out. She didn't seem to have seen him make a grand appearance in her life. However, she had never doubted his strength. Even though she had saved him in the Jiufu forest when he was being hunted down, that was only because the cold poison in his body had flared up. Now that he had returned, she saw that his body had recovered quickly. The cold poison had been cured, and his strength was no longer suppressed. He should have few opponents like this. "Ing Yi, go and get someone to prepare. Let them stay in the northern courtyard," Xianyuan Mo ordered in a deep voice. "Yes, sir." Ing Yi nodded and left. "Do I need to do anything?" she asked. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mo turned his head slightly and looked at her beside him. His beautiful lips curved into a gentle smile. "You just need to stay by my side." Inside the imperial palace, the monarch saw Yang Yong and Hui Lang sent by Xianyuan Moses. "He sent you two to welcome the crown prince and princess of the Qishui Empire." "Monarch, my master said that our Xianyuan Empire is still a great country. We are the head of all the empires. You shouldn't have to personally welcome a crown prince and a princess. Therefore, he ordered us to bring them to the residence after they have greeted you, monarch, and we will entertain them." Hearing this, the monarch's dark expression eased a little. He glanced at Yang Yong. "You are the second son of the Yang family?" "Yes," he replied respectfully. His voice was neither haughty nor humble. You may leave. You two wait outside the eastern courtyard." He waved his hand, indicating that the two of them should leave. "Yes," Yang Yong replied. Then he walked out with Hui Lang. Chapter 1260. Hui Lang looked at Yang Yong beside him as he walked towards the eastern hall. He couldn't help but say in admiration, "Old Yang, you're really a butler. You're neither haughty nor humble in front of the king. I don't even dare to breathe loudly when I see him." Yang Yong smiled warmly. "That's nothing. We just have to remember that our master is called Xianyuan Mo. Everyone else has to be respectful. There's no need to be afraid of anyone. No wonder master lets you handle everything. If it were me, I wouldn't be able to do it." In the past, when master left, the entire residence was under Yang Yong's management. Nothing happened. If it were him, he wouldn't be able to do it. Everyone has their own strengths. I can't compare to what you have. Hearing this, he became excited and asked excitedly, "Oh. You have something that I can't compare to you? What is it?" Hearing this, Yang Yong's mouth twitched. He glanced at him. "I don't have the courage to move forward." "Oh. Is that so?" "That's true. You have to think twice when you encounter a problem. I'm not like you, taking action without a word. Direct and quick." He nodded, rather pleased with himself. Yang Yong smiled warmly and did not say anything else. When he arrived at the entrance of the Eastern Palace Hall, he waited for approximately 2 hours before he saw the two of them walk out. A glint flashed in his warm eyes as he began to size them up without leaving a trace. The man was about 25 years old. He wore a purple robe with a jade belt around his waist. His face was handsome and outstanding. However, his skin was slightly pale. He didn't give off a masculine aura, but rather a feminine aura. As for the woman by his side, she wore a gorgeous dress. Her hands were placed upright before her, and her footsteps were steady and elegant. Her peerlessly beautiful appearance carried an innate nobility, and the red mark that seemed like a flame between her brows added an unusual elegance to her. Her eyes were suffused with a charming charm that was unforgettable. As expected of the two most important people of the Qishui dynasty, one of the 8 great empires. These two people were outstanding beyond his expectations. He put away his thoughts and slowly walked forward. He cupped his hands and bowed. This one is Yang Yong. Greetings to Prince Qishui and the third princess. Yang Yong. Prince Qishui's slender eyes swept over and landed on Yang Yong. Yes, I'm here to welcome the two of you into the mansion under my master's orders. Your master is Shenyuan Mo's. Exactly. Lead the way. He waved his hand, indicating for them to follow. Please. He leaned to the side and gestured for them to leave. Then, he and Hui Lang led them out. Prince Qishui and the third princess came to the Shenyuan Empire with a group of people. Therefore, when this group of people arrived at the crown prince's mansion, they also attracted the attention of everyone. However, other than some of their trusted aides, no one else was allowed to enter the mansion. Therefore, when Prince Qishui arrived at the gate of the mansion, he ordered his men to settle down the accompanying guards. He and his sister brought 10 trusted aides into the mansion. Yang Yong personally led them to the northern courtyard to settle down. The entire northern courtyard was given to them as a place to rest. Then, he looked at the two of them and said, "If the two of you are lacking anything, you can ask the servants to find me. I will arrange it for the two of you." Chapter 1261. Your Highness, you must be tired from your long journey. Please take a rest today. Tomorrow, my master will hold a welcoming dinner for the two of you. You will naturally be able to see my master then. As Yang Yong spoke, he bowed slightly. "I will take my leave first." Seeing Yang Yong turn and leave, the third princess who had been silent all this time finally spoke. "Brother Crown Prince, this Shenyuan Crown Prince has many talented subordinates. Such a person is actually only his housekeeper. You may not know this, but this Yang Yong was originally the second son of a large family in the Shenyuan dynasty. However, he has been by Shenyuan Mo's side since he was young. This person's ability and methods are extraordinary, and he is also loyal and devoted. He is extremely trusted by Shenyuan Mo's. The Shenyuan Crown Prince is known as the head of the 8 great empires. Brother Crown Prince, is that person really so outstanding? Can he be compared to you?" The woman's voice carried a trace of curiosity as she inquired. In her heart, her brother Crown Prince was the most outstanding person. However, she had heard that the Shenyuan Crown Prince was the head of the 8 great empires. Even the monarchs of the 8 great empires did not dare to underestimate this person. This time, her father had also mentioned to her that he wanted to form a marriage alliance with the Shenyuan dynasty. This person was none other than her and him. On this trip, other than accompanying her brother, she also wanted to meet the Shenyuan Crown Prince, Shenyuan Mo's, who was praised and not to be underestimated. Was that person really that outstanding? Was he worthy of her? When Prince Qishui heard this, his expression changed slightly. A dark light flashed in his eyes. "I also want to meet this Shenyuan Crown Prince. I want to see if he is really that outstanding." On the other side, after making arrangements for the two people in the north courtyard, Yang Yong came to the main courtyard. Entering the courtyard, he came to the table and called, "Master." "Yes, everything is arranged." Shenyuan Mo's was playing chess with Fengjiu. Therefore, he was staring at the chessboard and did not even raise his head. Yes, everything is arranged. They want to meet you, master. I told them that you will be holding a welcoming dinner for them in your residence. You will meet them tomorrow. He explained the arrangements to him. What's your impression of these two? He placed a piece, then raised his head to look at Yang Yong. Hearing this, Yang Yong glanced at Fengjiu and paused for a moment before saying, very outstanding, unexpectedly outstanding. Seeing him look at her before he spoke, Fengjiu couldn't help but smile, but didn't say anything. Hui Lang, on the other hand, was a little confused. He asked, Old Yang, why do you want to see Little Li? This has nothing to do with him, right? On the side, Yi sighed inwardly, thinking, how come this idiot still can't see that the person sitting here is not Little Li, but Ghost Dr. Fengjiu? Xianyuan Mose also glanced at him, but didn't say anything. Instead, he said to Yang Yong, get someone to arrange it. I'll meet them tomorrow. Yes. Yang Yong replied before taking his leave. You too can leave as well. Xianyuan Mose gestured for Hui Lang and Yi to leave. Yes. Yi replied. Only Hui Lang stood there and stared at the young man sitting there, then asked, Master, should we send Little Li out as well? This kid has been hanging around you all day and doesn't do anything. I think it's better to send him out to sweep the floor, water the plants and pull out the weeds than to just hang around here. Hearing this, Yi quickly left, not daring to stay any longer. Chapter 1262. Xianyuan Mose heard this and coldly glanced at him. Hui Lang didn't see it because he heard the youth laughing. He was dissatisfied and stared at him. What are you laughing at? I'm talking to you. What are you laughing at? Seeing that Xianyuan Mose was about to speak, Fengjiu stood up and motioned him to stay put. Thus, she smiled at Hui Lang, no, guard captain, you think you're right, so I'll get up and make room for you. Come, sit here. She went forward and pulled him to the place where she sat just now, which was right in front of Xianyuan Mose. She smiled and said, you stay here and chat with master. I'll go sweep the floor, water the flowers, and pull out the weeds. No, he couldn't sit still because master was staring at him coldly. Even if he didn't say anything, it gave him a kind of frightening pressure, which made him restless and wanted to escape. However, this youth kept forcing him to sit still. It's fine, you stay here and chat with master. I think you must have a lot to say to master. Just sit here. I'll go water the flowers first. She said, holding back her laughter as she walked out. No, don't go. He was scared this time. Let him sit in front of master and chat with master. He couldn't do such a stressful job. He wanted to stand up and leave, but who knew that at this time, he heard master's voice. Where are you going? You're not going to sit. Xianyuan Mose coldly glanced at him. Master, I want to go sweep the floor, water the flowers, and pull out the weeds. I want Xiao Li to come back and chat with you, drink tea, and play chess. He smiled embarrassedly and looked at master's nervous face. Didn't you say that she was wandering around here? How can that be? Not everyone can accompany master to pass time. I'll go find her and bring her back. I'll bring her back now. He quickly stood up and walked out. Humph. Xianyuan Mose looked at the departing figure and snorted heavily. This idiot. Even the people around him could tell Fengjiu's identity. He was the only one who was still stupid. He had spent a lot of time with Fengjiu in the past. He actually couldn't recognize her even when she appeared in front of him all day. On the other side, Fengjiu walked around after leaving the courtyard. He took out a fruit from his space and ate it as he walked. When he passed by the rockery, he heard a voice. The servant over there, come here for a moment. She looked in the direction of the voice and saw a beautiful woman in a gorgeous dress standing in the garden on the other side of the rockery. In the pavilion behind the rockery sat a feminine man in a purple robe. When she saw the two people, she guessed their identities, but she didn't want to pay attention to them. However, since they pointed at her, she couldn't refuse. Thus, after eating the fruit in her hand, she walked around the rockery and slightly cupped her hands in greeting. "Third princess, are you calling this little one?" She smiled and narrowed her eyes as she asked, calmly sizing up the beautiful woman in front of her. Seeing this woman, she finally understood why Yang Yong said she was very outstanding. Chapter 1263. Thinking about it, how could the princess of the Qishui dynasty, one of the 8 great empires, be ordinary? "You know me?" The Qishui princess was slightly surprised and glanced at the servant. "I know. Everyone in the mansion knows that Prince Qishui and the third princess came to our mansion." Hearing this, she nodded and asked, "Then, is your master in the mansion?" Fengjiu grinned. "He seems to be here, but also seems to be not." The beautiful princess frowned. "What seems to be here? But also seems to be not here?" "I didn't see my master go out, but I also didn't see my master in the mansion, so I don't know if my master is here." "Then where is your master's courtyard?" The Qishui princess asked again. "Third princess, our housekeeper said that a banquet will be prepared tomorrow. At that time, my master will give you two a welcome dinner. You will be able to see my master tomorrow." She smiled and didn't say anything. Prince Qishui, who was sitting in the pavilion, glanced at the figure. His feminine eyes flashed and he said to the third princess, "How difficult is it to see Xianyuan Mo's? I have many ways to make him come out." As he spoke, he stood up and walked out of the pavilion. The third princess was slightly surprised. She turned to look at her brother and asked, "Brother Crown Prince, what do you mean? How to make Xianyuan Mo's come out by himself?" When they arrived at the mansion, Xianyuan Mo's should come out to see them. After settling them down, he disappeared without a trace. It was obvious that he didn't put them in his eyes. At this time, Fengjiu looked at the figure walking towards her and couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. She secretly wondered what Prince Qishui wanted to do. Just as she was thinking, she heard a stern shout with pressure coming towards her. "Audacious servant! You are so arrogant and impudent." The stern shout with a powerful pressure came, but Fengjiu still stood there without moving. She only scratched her head and looked around. Her gaze fell on Prince Qishui with some doubt. "Your Highness, who are you talking about?" Prince Qishui and the third princess's expressions froze. They looked at the manservant, who looked as if nothing had happened, and saw that he could still stand there without moving, as if he couldn't feel the pressure that was pressing down on him. "Kneel before me." Prince Qishui bellowed again with a sullen face. A pressure that could be seen with the naked eye enveloped the manservant in front of him. Fengjiu raised his eyebrows. As he retreated, he said, "If your highness and third princess have nothing else to say, then I'll take my leave." Prince Qishui's eyes flashed when he saw that the servant was retreating as if he didn't feel anything. He suddenly reached out and attacked the servant who was retreating. "You want to leave? Did I allow it?" A sharp qi blade with a suppressive aura struck out. His hand quickly grabbed Fengjiu's neck as he retreated. He seemed to be angry and wanted to break Fengjiu's neck. Hiss! "Stop!" Hui Lang, who had come in search of Fengjiu, saw this scene and his face turned pale with fright. This little Li is master's treasure. If he was killed by Prince Qishui, then the matter would be serious. As he shouted for the prince to stop, he rushed forward at the same time. However, due to the distance between them and the fact that the Qishui crown prince did not stop because of his shout, he could not help but feel his heart rise to his throat when he saw that the hand was about to grab Xiao Li's slender and fragile neck. He only felt his heart tremble in fear. Chapter 1264. This was because he saw the youth easily avoid Prince Chishue's chokehold. Although it was only a slight movement, the exquisiteness of his movements made him feel incredulous. He vaguely felt as if he saw someone's shadow. I didn't expect Crown Prince Xuanyuan's residence to be filled with hidden talents. Even a lowly manservant has such skills. Prince Chishue narrowed his eyes. His feminine gaze carried a trace of malice as he stared at the manservant who retreated. He was secretly shocked. If even a manservant had such skills, then how many hidden experts were there in this residence that he could not detect? Your Highness flatters me. I'm just an errand boy, she said with a fake smile. She stared at the two men for a while and said meaningfully, Prince Chishue, it's best that you don't be too impulsive. After all, you're a guest. Furthermore, my master is very protective. If someone is missing from this residence, he won't let it go easily. After saying this, her lips curled into a cold smile. She glanced at the two men and saw clearly what they were thinking. Prince Chishue, even if the people in our residence have done something wrong, we should be the ones to teach them a lesson. I hope there won't be a next time when a sudden attack like today will suddenly occur. Hui Lang said. He paused and looked at the two men, saying, I will truthfully report what happened here today to my master. After saying this, he said to Fengjiu, let's go. After all, they were guests here. Prince Chishue watched the two men leave and did not stop them. However, his gaze was gloomy and his heart did not feel good. Brother Crown Prince, let's go back first. The third princess stepped forward and said. Prince Chishue nodded and looked at the two men who had walked away. Only then did he walk towards the northern courtyard. Seeing this, Princess Chishue hurriedly followed and returned to the northern courtyard. On the other side, Hui Lang led his men away until they reached a tree. He stopped and looked at the person beside him in confusion. He called out tentatively, Ghost Doctor. Fengjiu. He called out again because he was very familiar with the way the youth had dodged. It was just like the Ghost Doctor's movement. He immediately reacted. Hearing this, Fengjiu raised his eyebrows and smiled, saying, It's not easy for you to recognize me. Ah. It's really you. Hui Lang saw that she admitted it and could not help but feel astonished. He asked, Why are you here? And you came alone. You actually sneaked into the residence. That fellow Yang Yong and Ning Yi, did they know? The two of them actually didn't tell me about it. That's too much. He Chishue's words. How you've offended them, SSS Res SSS. They SSSSSSSSSSS, they've gone too far. I'll definitely have Master deal with them. He said angrily, then said, That's right, Master is in the courtyard. You should go back first. I'll be there in a bit. She replied and walked towards the main courtyard. Chapter 1265. Tell Yang Yong to go over and tell them that if they dare to touch the people in the palace again, they can immediately scram. A low voice filled with anger rang out. This anger was not for any other reason than the fact that the person Prince Chishue wanted to touch was Fengjiu. This was something that he could not tolerate. Yes. That shadow guard respectfully replied before leaving in a flash. Fengjiu, who was outside, walked in at this time. Seeing the dark expression on the person's face in the courtyard, his heart sunk. He found out so quickly. That's right, there were shadow guards everywhere in the palace. It would be strange if he did not know what happened in the palace. Are you in a bad mood? She asked with a smile as she walked to the table in the courtyard and sat down. That Prince Chishue's cultivation is not low. In the future, you have to be careful when you see him. He opened his mouth and reached out to hold her hand. I don't want to see you get hurt. Don't worry, I'll be fine. But that Prince Chishue will be a bit troublesome. She lightly smiled as her eyes flashed with a strange light. Seeing this, Xianyuan Mose was slightly surprised and asked, "What did you do?" "It's nothing much. I know that he's a guest in your palace, so naturally nothing can happen to him. So, I know what I'm doing." She smiled as her eyes narrowed. "You'll see tomorrow. You'll know tomorrow." Who was she? Who dared to touch her? If she wanted to deal with someone, she only needed to move her finger at any time. Moreover, no one would be able to find any evidence against her. Seeing the confidence in her words and the smile on her face, he did not ask any more questions. After all, no matter what, he had to see those two people tomorrow. He had to be a good host. From that night onwards, Prince Qishui had to go to the outhouse every hour. Moreover, it was the kind that went straight down. Even after taking medicine, it did not stop. It wasn't until the next morning that the completely exhausted Prince Qishui was brought back to his room to rest by the guards. After a night, his entire face was haggard and he looked like he was about to collapse. In the middle of the night, Yang Yong, who had received the news, sent the physicians in the residence over to take a look. The conclusion was that the patient's stomach wasn't in good condition. Although he had taken the prescribed medicine, it didn't stop the diarrhea. Furthermore, as soon as he ate the medicine, he had to run to the latrine. "Early morning, brother Crown Prince, are you feeling better?" The third princess stood outside the door and asked worriedly. It was unlikely that someone had tampered with the food, because the two of them had eaten the same food. Moreover, they were in the manor. She felt that it was impossible for Xianyuan Mose to do such a thing. But unfortunately, her crown prince brother had a stomachache at this time, and from last night until now, he didn't even have the strength to speak. "You can go to the reception banquet today." "I'm afraid I can't." The voice inside was halfway through when the door suddenly opened. A figure holding the door quickly walked out and went to the latrine at the back. Seeing this, the third princess was slightly startled. She glanced at the figure heading towards the outhouse and frowned slightly. Why was he the only one like this? There were physicians in their entourage as well. She had asked them, but they didn't find any other problems. It was just as the physician had said, that his stomach wasn't well because he wasn't acclimatized to the climate. It was noon when the third princess saw that he didn't dare to eat and was resting on the bed with an empty stomach. Only then did she turn and leave. Chapter 1266. Yang Yong came over to take a look and inquired about Prince Qishui's situation. After learning that Prince Qishui was unable to attend, he led the way for the third princess and led her to the front courtyard. Other than the two maidservants by her side, the third princess also had two grey-robed cultivators with her. They all arrived at the front courtyard and sat down in the front courtyard's hall under Yang Yong's arrangement. "Third princess, please wait for a moment. I will go invite my master." As he spoke, he bowed slightly and walked out. After waiting for a while, just as she was starting to get impatient, she saw a black figure walking towards her with steady steps. That person's back was facing the light and his features could not be seen clearly due to the lighting. However, the powerful aura he exuded was extremely intimidating. Just his aura alone was already above her crown prince brothers. It was no wonder that this person was ranked first among the crown princes of the 8 great empires. "Third princess, this is our master," Yang Yong introduced as he retreated to the side. Only then did the third princess get a clear look at the person who had walked up and sat down. With just one look, her heart began to thump violently. Nervousness, anticipation, joy, and apprehension all surged up in her heart. With just one look, she was completely captivated. She only saw that the person's handsome features carried a hint of resoluteness. His handsome features were as sharp as a knife and his 2 eyebrows were like swords. His deep black eyes were bottomless and contained an intimidating and domineering aura. Under his tall nose, his thin lips were slightly pursed, and all of these attracted her gaze. In particular, he was dressed in a black robe embroidered with dark cloud patterns and had a jade belt around his waist. His entire body exuded a fierce and restrained domineering aura of a king and a powerful expert. That kind of intimidating aura did not lose out to her royal fathers, causing her heart to skip a beat. This person, no wonder he was ranked first among the crown princes of the 8 great empires. His brilliance was above everyone else, and no matter how one looked at it, no one else could compare to him. In the past, she had thought that her crown prince brother was already a very outstanding person. However, after seeing him today, Xianyuan Mose finally understood what kind of man was a real man. In this world, there was actually such an outstanding man who gathered the essence of heaven and earth into his body. The domineering aura of a king was incomparably noble, dazzling like the stars in the 9 heavens, causing people to involuntarily fall head over heels and want to kneel at his feet. Feng Jiu, who had followed behind her, saw the 3rd princess staring at Xianyuan Mose with a love-struck expression. He couldn't help but twitch his mouth and glance at the expressionless man sitting upright. Sure enough, a man's looks were a source of calamity. Why was this man so good-looking? Look at how mesmerized this woman is. She's completely mesmerized. Seeing that the infatuated princess was still in a daze, she cleared her throat and said loudly, "3rd princess, this is my master." Everyone in the hall was taken aback by her sudden outburst. Xianyuan Mose raised his eyes slightly and glanced at her. A trace of a smile flashed across his deep black eyes. As for Yang Yong, he had a gentle and appropriate smile on his face. However, when he heard her words, the smile on his face only deepened. Only the 3rd princess, who was caught off guard by this sudden shout, was so frightened that her delicate body trembled. She hurriedly came back to her senses, and after composing herself, she glanced at the servant who was walking toward Xianyuan Mose and recognized him as the person from yesterday. Chapter 1267. Sit. Xianyuan Mose gestured and didn't say anything else. The 3rd princess's name was Ying Shui. She was both a princess and the #1 beauty in Qishui city. Now, Xianyuan Mose only glanced at her indifferently. His gaze was as indifferent as water, without a trace of emotion. He didn't even show a trace of surprise. She couldn't help but lower her eyes and move forward. She lowered her head, revealing the side of her beautiful face. Her figure was graceful, her steps were light, and her skirt fluttered lightly. She was as beautiful and enchanting as a fairy. Feng Jiu, who was watching from the side, couldn't help but praise. This woman was indeed as beautiful as a fairy. She looked at Xianyuan Mose and saw him sitting there expressionlessly. He didn't even look at the princess. She couldn't help but find it funny. Was it because she didn't dare to look at the beauty here? She didn't say he couldn't look. Her eyes moved slightly. She stepped forward to the table and poured wine for the 2 of them. Seeing this, Xianyuan Mose looked at her again. When his gaze fell on her, his deep black eyes flashed with either a trace of a smile or a trace of affection. This time, even Princess Ying Shui, who was sitting down, noticed it. She couldn't help but look sideways. Following Xianyuan Mose's gaze, she looked at the servant who was pouring wine. Looking at him, this servant didn't seem to have anything special. But yesterday, when her brother wanted to use this servant to lure Xianyuan Mose out, this servant's performance was somewhat unexpected. She couldn't see any spiritual energy fluctuations on his body, but he should be an expert. Otherwise, how could he avoid her brother's chokehold? However, this crown prince Xianyuan didn't look at a beauty like her. Instead, he looked at a delicate and pretty servant. Could it be that she couldn't compare to a servant? Yang Yong, who was waiting on the side, looked at this scene and couldn't help but find it funny. In the past, he had only heard about the matter between Master and the ghost doctor. When he heard Grey Wolf and Shadow say that Master had done many things for the ghost doctor that made them flabbergasted, he originally thought that they were exaggerating. After all, his impression of master had always been noble and cold. It was really hard to imagine how a person like master could please a woman. However, just by looking at this scene, he knew that he didn't follow his master and must have missed many interesting things. I heard that Prince Qishui isn't feeling well. Are you feeling better now? Xianyuan Mose turned around and looked at Princess Yingyu, who was sitting across from him. Perhaps he's not acclimatized, but he is already better, thanks for your concern. She softly said. Her beautiful eyes were like water, looking at the man full of masculinity, but. And if you. And you. And. If you is s. And, if you feels, s feel. Have, t-a. When Yang Yong heard this, he lowered his head and hid the smile in his eyes. Fengjiu stood beside Xianyuan Mose with a wine jug and looked at the sky. When Princess Ying Xue heard this, the smile on her face froze. Let a housekeeper take me out to play. Then what about him? Can he refuse just because he is busy? Could it be that she was so unworthy of his attention? He didn't even have the mood to accompany her out to play. Chapter 1268. The Qishui Empire and the Xianyuan Empire want to form a marriage alliance. I wonder if the Crown Prince knows about it. She raised her eyes and asked. Her voice was still soft and charming, as gentle as water. Fengjiu's eyes moved slightly as he looked at the princess. Xianyuan Mose raised his wine cup and took a sip. His deep and magnetic voice was heard unhurriedly. Could it be that the princess has taken a fancy to one of the princes of the Xianyuan Empire? Hearing this, Princess Ying Xue smiled. In an instant, her smile was like a blooming flower. It was extremely beautiful. I know that other than the crown prince, there are other princes in the Xianyuan Empire. However, Ying Xue wants to say that if it's a marriage alliance, Ying Xue will only marry you. Was she confessing on the spot? Fengjiu looked at Princess Ying Xue with a strange expression. She dared to say it in front of him. This Princess Ying Xue was really something. If it was another man, he would have fainted from excitement after hearing this. Fortunately, the one she had taken a fancy to would not be so easily charmed. Therefore, she wanted to say, Princess Ying Xue, I'm sorry that you're late. This man is already reserved by me. I'm not interested in you. Xianyuan Mose said coldly in a deep voice. There was not a trace of gentleness in his voice. He directly stated his intentions and completely ignored Princess Ying Xue's beautiful face, which was as beautiful as a flower, turning pale in an instant. Since Prince Qishui is not feeling well, the princess should go back and take care of him first. If he is not getting better, I can ask someone to send you back to the Qishui Empire so that Prince Qishui's health won't be affected. Hearing those rude words, Princess Ying Xue raised her eyes and stared at him. Is this how the crown prince acts as a host? Is this how the Xianyuan Empire treats its guests? No, the princess misunderstands. This is how I treat my guests. I've already treated the princess and Prince Qishui well enough. His voice paused as he looked at her with a piercingly cold gaze. If anyone dares to make a move on this monarch's people in this monarch's residence, this monarch will definitely order people to kill them on the spot. His deep and dignified voice carried a cold aura. He was telling her that if they were not the crown prince and princess of Qishui province, then yesterday's matter would not have been settled so easily. Ying Xue's heart trembled when she was stared at by his deep, dark eyes. She could clearly see the coldness and mercilessness in his eyes and understood that he was not joking around. He really meant it. At this moment, her heart was slightly shocked. This Xianyuan Mose once again gave her a sense of impact that she had never felt before. If it were anyone else, it would be impossible for them to say such words. No matter what, they would have to consider the diplomatic relations between the two countries and leave some face. However, he had said such words. This was clearly telling them that he dared to do what others dared not do. What others might care about, he wouldn't. After a long time, she stood up and bowed slightly. Ing Shui will take her leave first. She turned around and walked out. When she was about to step out of the door, she paused and turned around to look at the man who was sitting upright, and said, "One day, I will make you marry me willingly." With that, she left. Fengjiu curled her lips and glanced at the man who was looking at her. She said in a bad mood, "Men are trouble." Chapter 1269. Yang Yong glanced at the two of them, smiled, and silently retreated. Fengjiu sat down at the table, one hand supporting his chin as he stared at him. Suddenly, he smiled strangely and said, "Let me tell you something." Hearing this, he raised his eyebrows and asked, "What is it?" "In the past few years when you weren't around, although I was dressed as a man, I was still able to attract many outstanding young men and women. When I walked on the streets, there were also people who threw fruits at me to express their love." His black eyes smiled and he nodded, "Yes, I believe that. Also, you know Mo Chen, right? He said he was the disciple of the Tianji elder and that he would wait for me here." After saying this, the man's face darkened. His handsome brows furrowed and his thin lips pursed. He said sourly and with a bit of seriousness, "Why would he wait for you? That person is a gigolo. You have to be careful. Don't think he's harmless just because he looks like a banished immortal. That kind of person is even more dangerous. You have to know that you can't judge a book by its cover." "Oh. Is that so? But I think he's quite good, and he doesn't get close to women." Hearing this, he hurriedly said, "I also don't get close to women, I only get close to you." "Don't get close to women?" she said with a fake smile, "But why do I remember that you have a beauty pavilion in the Yama Palace over there? There are pure ones, enchanting ones, plump ones, and petite ones. It can be said that there are 100 flowers dazzling, each with their own unique characteristics. And once, you even called 2 women over. The women in that beauty pavilion are useful. You know this too. Didn't you go for a stroll there? You should know that I didn't mess around. That matter back then wasn't my idea, it was all Hui Lang's idea." He directly pushed the matter to Hui Lang. Seeing her cross her arms and coldly snort, he hurriedly changed the topic. "There's a restaurant in the city that makes exquisite and delicious dishes. How about I take you to try it?" Hearing this, she smiled and asked, "Aren't you going to bring the number 1 beauty, Princess Ing Shui, who confessed to you? If she wants to go out, Yang Yong will take her. By my side, the only woman will be you." Hearing this, she felt much better. "All right then. I'll eat with you." Xianyuan Mose couldn't help but laugh as he shook his head. After standing up, he held her hand and walked out. Their good mood wasn't ruined by Princess Ing Shui's appearance. Even though Fengjiu was jealous, he was still happy in his heart. After leaving the mansion, the two of them sat in the carriage with Ing Yi accompanying them. The 3 of them simply went to a restaurant in the city. In the northern courtyard, Princess Ing Shui was listening to a grey-clothed man's report. When she learned that Xianyuan Mose had brought that servant out, she couldn't help but frown and ask, "Who is that servant?" A young man actually caught his eye. It said that he's the distant nephew of the outer courtyard's manager. His name is Li Daniu. The grey-clothed man said. The distant nephew of the outer courtyard's manager, Li Daniu? She sneered, that young man doesn't look good, but his skills are extraordinary. How could he be Li Daniu? Chapter 1270. In the restaurant. When the shopkeeper saw that the person who came in was the crown prince, he hurriedly stepped forward and saluted, "Greetings, your highness." Xianyuan Mose waved his hand and didn't say anything. He just glanced around. Ing Yi stepped forward and ordered, "Prepare a private room for his highness." This. The shopkeeper looked embarrassed. "What's wrong?" Are there no more private rooms? Ing-yi asked. Today's private rooms are all taken. But it's okay. I'll go up and discuss with them to make a room for your highness. Your highness, please go to the second floor and have a seat. He invited him upstairs and planned to discuss with the people in the private room. After all, he was the crown prince. His prestige spread far and wide. If he wanted a private room, he only needed to say a word. He believed that the people in the private room would let him have a seat if they knew it was the crown prince. Since there are people in the private room, it's the same for us to have a private room. Let's find a window seat on the second floor. Xian Yuanmo said. He then said to Fengjiu beside him, the view from the private room on the second floor is better. We can see the bustling scene on the street. Well, then we'll have a private room. Fengjiu nodded. The shopkeeper couldn't help but look at the young man in the servant's uniform. When he heard them say that a private room was good, he hurriedly stepped forward and led them. Your Highness, this table is good. This table has the best view. When the shopkeeper saw Xian Yuanmo's sit down and the young man in the servant's uniform also sit down in front of His Highness, his eyelids couldn't help but twitch. When he saw the guard in black standing behind His Highness, he couldn't help but ask with a smile, what would your Highness and this young master like to eat? He had seen all kinds of people. At this moment, if he still didn't know that this young man was not a servant, he would have lived in vain. He didn't dare. In the entire Xianyuan Empire, there were only a few people who dared to eat and sit with His Highness. I'll have one of your specialties and a golden crispy skin roll. All right, I'll get someone to prepare it right away. The shopkeeper replied and hurriedly retreated. All kinds of delicacies were placed on the table, and the aroma filled the air. Even before eating, Fengjiu could not help but swallow his saliva just by smelling the aroma. It looks delicious. Hearing this, he chuckled and picked up his chopsticks to help her. Eat it while it's hot. Eat more if you like it. You're too skinny. How am I thin? You're obviously the same. You haven't lost any weight. You didn't lose weight. But why do I look thinner? His burning gaze stared at her flat chest, his handsome and resolute face carrying a trace of ridicule. Fengjiu raised his eyes and met his gaze. He couldn't help but spit. What are you looking at? Hurry up and eat your food. Hearing this, Xianyuan Moza's lips curled up in delight. He ate some food like a greedy cat, then picked up more for her and said, eat slowly. We have plenty of time. The people at the other tables on the second floor couldn't help but be stunned. They thought that there was something wrong with their eyes. They rubbed their eyes and looked again. They still saw His Highness the Crown Prince picking up food for a servant. They couldn't help but wonder, who is this servant? Chapter 1271. Not long after, one of the kitchen staff carried a small table to Xianyuan Moza's Fengjiu's table. Your Highness, this is the last dish. It's the golden crispy skin roll. The manager said from the side. Roast duck. Fengjiu was startled. Looking at the golden roast duck and the side dishes, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. This is the three-colored spirit duck, the signature dish here. Look, this spirit duck only has a thin layer of meat on its skin. The skin is crispy and juicy, fat but not greasy. It is fragrant and has a unique taste. Xianyuan Mo said, and a smile appeared in his eyes because he saw the person sitting across from him had a greedy expression. Fengjiu stared at the knife in the chef's hand. She watched as he cut the duck's skin with a few strokes. Each layer of skin only had a thin layer of meat. In fact, she really wanted to say that she had eaten this before, but the taste was probably different. Please enjoy. He folded the golden crispy skin roll into a plate and placed it in front of the two of them. After adding some sauce, he retreated. Xianyuan Mo's picked up a piece for her. Try it. You should eat too. Don't just watch me eat, you haven't eaten much yourself. She also picked up a piece for him as she spoke. All right. He replied and ate with her. Seeing her eat happily, his heart was also satisfied. After the two of them finished eating, they drank a cup of tea to calm down. Only then did they walk around the city together. At the same time, in the imperial palace, the king already knew that Xianyuan Mose did not accompany the Qishui's third princess and instead accompanied a manservant for a stroll outside. Who is that manservant? He asked in a low voice as he stared at the hidden guard below. It is said that he is the distant nephew of the steward of the palace's outer courtyard. He has only been in the palace for a few days, but His Highness is very fond of him. The hidden guard reported. An unrelated person can make him condescend to accompany him out to play, eat, and drink? Investigate. Find out the background of that person for this emperor. Yes. The hidden guard replied and quickly left. In the evening, Yang Yong, who had returned to his residence, went to the main courtyard. Master. He bowed, glanced at Fengjiu, and nodded slightly. Fengjiu also returned the gesture. Seeing that they had something to talk about, he said, I'll go out for a walk first. You guys talk. When Xianyuan Mose saw this, he didn't stop her. Instead, he looked at Yang Yong and asked, What's the matter? There's a secret letter from the palace saying that the monarch is furious. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose raised his eyebrows and looked at him, waiting for him to continue. The monarch knows that master did not accompany the Qishui third young master but accompanied a manservant out to play and eat. He is very unhappy, I am worried. He was worried that the monarch would make a move on ghost Dr. Fengjiu because his identity was unknown. Moreover, the monarch has just sent someone to summon master to the palace. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose's deep black eyes flashed with a faint light and said, Amen, have someone prepare a carriage. This emperor is also about to enter the palace to explain things to him, in case he really plans to use this emperor to form a marriage alliance with Qishui. Yang Yong hesitated for a moment, and said, Master, although the ghost doctor's identity is the princess of the Phoenix dynasty, the difference in strength between a sixth-ranked country and the 8 great empires is not just a little bit. The monarch is also a person who places great importance on family. I'm afraid that he will not easily acknowledge the ghost doctor. His eyes narrowed slightly, and his deep voice carried a dignified tone, This emperor's woman, this emperor's approval is enough. Why does she need someone else's approval? Chapter 1272. In the main hall of the imperial palace. The monarch, who was sitting on the main seat, stared sharply at Xianyuan Mose. He asked in a low and dignified voice, What did you just say? Say it again. At this moment, the pressure of a superior was unleashed, accompanied by a powerful, intimidating aura that directly pressured Xianyuan Mose. I said, I will decide my own marriage, he said again. His voice was firm and unyielding, and he had no intention of backing down. Hearing this, the monarch's heart burned with anger, but he did not flare up. He suppressed the anger in his heart and stared at the figure standing upright below. This son of his was extremely outstanding in every aspect. He believed that in the future, his son's achievements would surpass his own. Therefore, he knew that forceful suppression would not work. Therefore, after he calmed down, he asked slowly, Decide your own marriage? Do you already have someone in your heart? Which country's princess? Or which family's daughter? Or which clan's genius? Father, you will know this in the future. He did not intend to tell him about Fengjiu now. From the moment he intended to marry Qishui, he knew that he could not bring Fengjiu to him. Otherwise, once he knew about Fengjiu's identity, he would definitely kill him. The monarch's eyes flickered. Seeing this, the monarch's eyes flickered. He waved his hand and said, Fine, since you don't want to tell me, I won't force you. I believe that you have your own ideas. The woman that you've taken a fancy to can't be too bad. However, you have to know that you're the crown prince of Shenyuan Kingdom, second only to one person. Your status isn't something that others can compare to. The woman that can stand beside you must be extremely outstanding. Otherwise, not only will you lose face, but also the face of our Shenyuan Kingdom. I understand, he replied. If there's nothing else, I'll head back first. He then turned around to leave. Wait. The monarch stopped him and asked, I heard that you are very fond of a servant in your residence. You even accompanied a servant out to play, but left Prince Chishui and Princess Chishui in your residence. Is this true? Father, you're really well informed. He looked at him, his cold face expressionless, and said, that person is not a manservant, he saved my life before. A few days ago, he came to the imperial city, so he accompanied her to walk around the city. As for Prince Chishui and Princess, I believe that imperial father has also received the news. They are not acclimatized to the climate, and their bodies are not well. It is only today that they are slightly better. Hearing this, he was silent for a while, then said, I have arranged to go hunting in the Jiuchong forest in 2 days. At that time, Prince Chishui and the princess will be there. You should accompany them on behalf of your father and let them have fun. Since that manservant is your savior, bring him to the palace some other day and let me see him. All right, he replied. Then, he bowed and turned to leave. Seeing him leave, the monarch's eyes flashed. He waved his hand, and 2 men in black appeared from the shadows. Keep an eye on him. If that manservant goes hunting in the Jiuchong mountain, test him for me. Yes, the 2 men in black replied, and retreated in a flash. Even their breaths were completely concealed. Back in the residence, Shenyuan Mose went to see Fengjiu, and then went with her to the north courtyard. How much did you drug him? He asked as he walked. Chapter 1273. I think you should pay more attention. It would be best if you could leave a deep impression on him. There was a hint of a smile in his deep voice. He held her hand and said, my father said that we'll go hunting in 2 days. I'll lead the team and bring the 2 of them to play. I think that if he can't get out of bed by then, this matter can be avoided. Hunting? I want to go too. She said excitedly, after all, he's the crown prince of Chishui province. I can't let him stay in bed forever. This is enough. Anyway, I've vented all my anger. If he dares to touch me again, it won't be too late for me to teach him a lesson. This Prince Chishui is an early-stage nascent soul cultivator. His cultivation was cultivated by accumulating a pile of heavenly materials and earthly treasures. Your cultivation has also entered the nascent soul realm. However, the difference is that you relied on yourself to become a nascent soul cultivator. In terms of fighting strength, I believe that you won't lose to him. Hearing this, she said, after I came here, I found that there are many nascent soul cultivators. Some of them are only shopkeepers in some treasure shops. You have to know, that kind of strength is already at the level of an ancestor where we come from. Even the waiters in the restaurants and inns have foundation establishment cultivation. Every place is the same. There are strong and weak people. Here, people who are too weak can't survive. Here, even ordinary people have spiritual masters. However, spiritual masters are too weak here. They can't even compare to foundation establishment cultivators. They can only do the most menial tasks. As Shenyuan Mo spoke, he saw that they were about to reach the northern courtyard. He stopped and looked at Fengjiu beside him and said, my father asked about you today. I only said that you saved my life. He asked me to bring you to the palace some other day. As he spoke, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Even though he didn't say anything, I can still feel a trace of killing intent from him. Therefore, I don't plan to bring you to see him now. Hearing this, her eyes flashed and she smiled. Don't worry. Since I've decided on you, I won't change my mind for any other reason. Even if your imperial father stops me, I'll make him nod his head in affirmation one day. She smiled and said, it's right in front. Let's go. Yes. The corners of his lips curled up slightly. His deep gaze carried a touch of gentleness as he moved away from her and walked towards the northern courtyard. When Princess Shui saw Xianyuan Mo's come to the northern courtyard to visit her brother, the crown prince, she was a little surprised. However, she still bowed and invited him into the courtyard. When she was about to enter the room, she saw the servant by Xianyuan Mo's side, and she was a little unhappy. It was him again. This young man was clearly wearing the clothes of a manservant, but there wasn't the slightest bit of humility from head to toe. He also didn't know what respect was. People who didn't know him would think that he was some kind of big shot. He didn't even greet her when he entered the room. He just ignored her, a princess, and followed Crown Prince Xianyuan into the room. She remembered that her brother only acted strangely after he made a move on this young man. She couldn't help but guess that her brother's current state was because of this young man. Is Prince Qishui feeling better? In the room, Xianyuan Mo's came to the bedside and looked at the extremely weak figure lying on the bed. Chapter 1274. That's good. Xianyuan Mo's nodded. He looked at the pale-faced Prince Qishui and said, the Nine-Tier Mountain is the royal hunting forest. I would like to invite the two of you to go hunting in 2 days. Would you be interested? Princess Shui was slightly startled and hesitated. Hunting? Would her brother be able to go hunting in 2 days with his current condition? Although she was worried, she did not dare to reject. Therefore, she looked at her brother who was lying on the bed. Since Crown Prince Xianyuan has invited me, I will naturally go with you. Prince Qishui said as he gestured to the guards beside the bed to help him up. After he sat down on the bed, he looked at Fengjiu, who was wearing a servant's uniform beside Xianyuan Mo's, and said, may I know who this person is? Xianyuan Mo's glanced at Fengjiu beside him and said, she is my attendant. So she is an attendant. Would your highness be willing to part with her? I am willing to use 10 chests of treasures to exchange for your servant. His gaze was fixed on Fengjiu because he was sure that the servant was the reason why he was lying here and speaking weakly. Hearing his words, Xianyuan Mo's face darkened, and the aura around his body became oppressive. He was like a lion about to fly into a rage. His deep and sharp eyes stared coldly at the Qishui crown prince, and he released all of his might. Not only was the Qishui crown prince's weak body unable to withstand it, but the atmosphere in the room also became oppressive. The air seemed to have condensed, and even breathing became difficult. Due to the strong pressure spreading in the room, 2 gray-clothed middle-aged men beside the crown prince of Qishui province walked out and blocked the side of the bed. They blocked the pressure for the pale-faced Prince Qishui and protected the chaotic qi and blood in his body. Prince Qishui, you better think twice before you speak next time. Xianyuan Mo stared at him coldly and said, not everyone can covet the people around me. Prince Qishui's expression changed slightly when he heard this. His words could make Prince Qishui react like this. It was obvious that this person was not as simple as a servant or a confidant. Prince Qishui could hear the man's strong and domineering possessiveness in his tone. Your Highness, my brother didn't mean it that way, Princess Shui said to ease the atmosphere, he was just joking. However, Prince Qishui laughed and said, no, I wasn't joking. I'm really interested in this servant. However, since your Highness is unwilling to part with him, then so be it. I've heard that there are many capable people around Prince Xianyuan, but I didn't expect to be lucky enough to experience them. His gaze landed on Fengjiu, who was standing quietly at the side. Wasn't it because he fell for Fengjiu's trick that he ended up in such a sorry state? Xianyuan Mo stood with his hands behind his back. He frowned slightly and was slightly displeased. This was because he saw Prince Qishui staring straight at his woman. Even though Fengjiu was wearing a servant's uniform, he still felt that this man was an eyesore when he saw him staring at his woman like that. Since Prince Qishui is fine, then I'll return. 2 days later, I'll wait for the two of you to go hunting in the 9 mountains. He walked out as soon as he finished speaking. Seeing this, Fengjiu also left. Soon, they left the north courtyard and went to the main courtyard. Chapter 1275. It's fine, it's just a hunt. His eyes darkened as he spoke, staring in the direction that the two people had left in. In the evening, after dinner, the two of them sat across from each other. Xianyuan Mose looked at Fengjiu sitting across from him. Staring at her servant's clothes, he asked with a smile, "Didn't you say that you would stay here for a few more months? Are you planning on staying by my side dressed like this? Aren't you going to wash off the disguise on your face?" Fengjiu rested her chin on her hands and looked at him with a smile. "Then what do you want to see me like? Wearing women's clothes?" Seeing the faint expectation in his eyes, she laughed and said, "You really want to see me in women's clothes?" Being stared at and teased by her, Xianyuan Mose's ears turned red and his face became a bit uncomfortable. He looked away and coughed, "You look very beautiful in women's clothes. So you're saying that I don't look good in men's clothes?" Her eyes were full of smiles as she looked at the man with red ears. That's right, how could she forget that this man was a cold and arrogant man? Thinking of how she looked like in men's clothes, he stared at her and said, "Men's clothes are handsome and evil, women's clothes. How about women's clothes?" She tilted her head and asked. The man opposite her had a pair of deep black eyes that shone like the stars in the night sky. He stared at her and said, "Women's clothing, enchanting and moving." She who had changed into a red dress was indeed incomparably beautiful, enchanting and moving. Even when he saw her, he couldn't help his heart beating fast and couldn't look away. However, she rarely wore women's clothes and her enchanting and evil appearance in women's clothes was even rarer. Every time he thought of how she had intentionally seduced him, his body would become restless. In the past, he had rarely been aroused. Even if he was aroused, it would be suppressed by the 1,000-year cold qi in his body. However, ever since the cold qi was dispelled, coupled with the fact that he had cultivated an extremely masculine cultivation method, and now that she was by his side, it was a test for him. Fengjiu looked at him and couldn't help but feel amused. A woman would doll herself up for her lover. Logically speaking, now that she had come to his side, she shouldn't be wearing a manservant's uniform with a face that he didn't recognize. At first, she didn't think much about it and thought that it was fine. However, after hearing his words and seeing his expectant expression, her eyes turned slyly. She took a sip of tea and said with a smile, "But I like to wear men's clothes. What should I do?" Hearing this, he looked at her, his gaze moving from her smiling face to her chest. He frowned slightly, as if he was troubled. "Wearing men's clothes all the time won't help you develop well." Puff. Ha 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 ha. Fengjiu burst out laughing. After putting down the tea in his mouth, he laughed out loud. Feeling a little uncomfortable from her laughter, he glanced at her with some embarrassment and annoyance. "What's so funny? This is the truth." With her growing body, her chest would not develop well if she kept it restrained. The shadow guards in the shadows heard the two's meaningless words and couldn't help but grin. Especially their master, so he was actually this kind of person. Chapter 1276. What did they say about being handsome in men's clothing and enchanting in women's clothing? Forgive them for not being able to tell. In the courtyard, the two people who were talking in the courtyard were startled when they heard the hidden guards unable to hold back their laughter. That's right, they had only cared about themselves and had forgotten that there were hidden guards here. Thinking about how the hidden guards had overheard their meaningless conversation, Fengjiu couldn't help but chuckle. She couldn't hide the smile in her eyes as she stared at the uneasy man. This arrogant and coquettish man was so cute. She couldn't help but want to tease him a little. What should she do? Xianyuan Mo's voice suddenly sounded. His deep gaze swept across the surroundings. Retreat 10 meters away. Block your ears if you're not supposed to hear. When his voice fell, Fengjiu saw that there were faint sounds coming from several places. It was obvious that the hidden guards had retreated. I don't mind them eavesdropping. Xianyuan Mo glanced at her and said, all right, let's not talk anymore. This lord is going to take a bath. He stood up and ordered the people outside to prepare water for a bath. Fengjiu's eyes lit up. Ah. Take a bath? Do you want me to help you take a bath? No need. He said unhappily. This woman, she was deliberately trying to anger him. Seeing him turn around to glare at her and then walk inside, her gaze turned and she said with a smile, how about we take a bath together? When her voice fell, the man who was about to step onto the stairs in the courtyard tripped and his footsteps faltered. Be careful. Don't get too excited. If you fall, it will damage your dignified and mighty image. She said while holding back her laughter. A certain someone turned around. His tense face was dyed with a faint blush, and his expression was awkward and embarrassed. He looked at the woman who was holding back her laughter and immediately strode back. While she was still in shock, he picked her up and walked into the room. Ah! What are you doing? Fengjiu was caught off guard and carried horizontally into the room. Fengjiu couldn't help but be startled and hurriedly held on to him to prevent him from falling. Xianyuan Mo saw her panicked look and finally smiled with satisfaction. He snorted, didn't you say you would help Benjun bathe? You still want to bathe with this lord? What were they waiting for? Come over now. Ah. Don't do it, okay? I was just joking. She said embarrassedly. If they really took a bath together, she was afraid that he wouldn't be able to resist turning into a wolf. Really? This monarch is not joking. He scoffed. After entering the room, he carried her to the bed and pressed her down. Staring at the woman trapped under his body, he was in a good mood. He felt as if his heart was flying. He teased her just like how she had teased him before. With a serious expression, he said, how about this? This monarch will help you bathe. Fengjiu's lips twitched. He felt like he had smashed his own foot with a rock. That's not good. She wrapped her hands around his neck, but her expression was serious. What's not good? He asked with a smile. We haven't gotten married yet. That's crossing the line. We need to be polite. You're right. He nodded in agreement. Seeing her expression relax, he thought for a bit and said, but, this monarch is the man you're engaged to, your fiancé. Tell me, shouldn't I ask for some benefits of being a fiancé? Chapter 1277. His gaze became deep and dark, his throat unconsciously moving as he stared at the woman smiling like a flower. He curled his lips, no, it should be like this. As soon as his voice fell, he leaned down, burying his head in her neck and bit down. Ah! So ticklish, ha ha ha. Fengjiu let out a low cry, shrinking her neck. Then she laughed out loud, pushing him away. Who knew that the man saw that she was ticklish and directly tickled her? Ah, ha 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 ha. Don't play ha 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 ha. Don't play ha 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 ha. Uncontrollable laughter came from the room, accompanied by pleas for mercy. Hearing this, the shadow guards who had retreated 10 meters away looked at each other and grinned. Hui Lang and Ning Yi who were walking over heard the laughter coming from the room in the courtyard. They couldn't help but stop in their tracks, especially Hui Lang. His face was full of curiosity, as if he wanted to sneak a peek. And he really couldn't help but walk forward. Ing Yi, who was behind him, rolled his eyes speechlessly and quickly reached out to pull him back, asking in a low voice, "Where are you going?" "I'm going to take a look." Hui Lang turned back and said matter-of-factly. "What are you looking for? Didn't you hear that it's Master and the other two inside?" Hui Lang grinned, saying, "I heard, but look at how they're laughing. I don't know what they're doing inside. I'm just going to take a peek." "Heh, Master won't know." "Master won't know? All right then. You go. If anything happens, don't look for me." He withdrew his hand and didn't pull him back. He crossed his arms and retreated to a tree not far away, leaning against it to watch. This idiot, Master and the ghost doctor were cultivating their relationship inside, and he wanted to see. Then let's go see. He didn't believe that Master wouldn't find out. "Chi, Ing Yi, you're too timid. This won't do. It's fine, you just wait here. I'll sneak over to take a look and then come back to tell you." He turned back and said to Ing Yi. Then he walked lightly and crept forward step by step. When he came to the corner of the room, he pressed his ear against the wall and listened for a while. Then he quietly opened the window, intending to take a peek inside. "Ha ha 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 ha. Don't, I can't, ha 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 ha." In the room, Fengjiu was tickled by his hands. He laughed so hard that he couldn't catch his breath and begged for mercy. This was the first time she knew that this usually serious and cold man actually knew how to tickle people. She laughed to death. "Do you still dare to do it next time?" He stopped and looked at her with a smile in his deep black eyes. "No, I wouldn't dare. I really wouldn't dare." With great difficulty, she finally managed to catch her breath and hurriedly promised. As she spoke, the two of them were startled because they heard a faint sound. Thus, after looking at each other, they both looked towards the window at the same time. Xianyuan Mose picked up a pillow from the bed. When he saw a head pop out of the window, he threw the pillow at it. Bang! Ah! Hui Lang cried out in alarm and hurriedly shrank back. He only heard the heavy sound of that thing hitting the window, scaring him so much that he wanted to scramble out. However, before he could leave the courtyard, the door opened and a familiar voice filled with anger sounded. "Stop right there for Ben Jun." Chapter 1278. Hee, Master, I hope I didn't disturb you." He turned around and smiled awkwardly, looking at him fawningly. But when he saw his master's dark expression and the pressure he was emitting, he felt his scalp go numb. Fengjiu leaned against the door and looked at Hui Lang with her arms crossed. She knew it was this idiot. If it was a normal person, they wouldn't do something like peeping. All right. Although she had peeped before, she was an exception. "Ing Yi. This subordinate is here." Ing Yi stepped forward and bowed respectfully. Xianyuan Mose glanced at Hui Lang and said, "Hang him upside down under the tree in the front yard and hit his laughing acupoint. Let him laugh until dawn." Hui Lang's eyes widened and he quickly begged for mercy, "Master, don't. I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have been so curious to see what you were doing inside. But I really didn't see anything. I really didn't see anything." Fengjiu's mouth twitched. She raised her head and looked at the sky. "This clown. Take him away." Xianyuan Mose waved his hand. "Yes." Ing Yi responded and stepped forward to drag Hui Lang away. Master. He cried out miserably, but he didn't dare to open his mouth to beg the ghost doctor for mercy. After all, her identity was a secret, and only the few of them by his master's side knew. If he shouted out, wouldn't everyone in the manor know? Thus, Hui Lang was hung upside down in the front yard where people were coming and going. He couldn't stop laughing there. As for the courtyard, Fengjiu saw that only the two of them were left. She smiled and said, "The night is perfect. I'll go out for a walk." She quickly rushed out. Xianyuan Mose raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, "Don't come back too late." Hearing the words behind her, Fengjiu almost stumbled and fell to the ground. She steadied herself and looked back. She heard his voice again. "I asked the kitchen to stew some bird nest for you to nourish your body." Hearing this, she blinked her eyes and revealed a joyful smile. "Got it." As she spoke, she waved her hand and flashed out. While Xianyuan Mose was taking a bath, Fengjiu went to the front yard. She saw the figure hanging upside down from the tree, trembling with laughter. When she saw Hui Lang, she walked over. "Hui Lang, how does it feel to hang upside down and enjoy the night breeze?" She sat down on a rock and looked at the laughing Hui Lang. "No, ha ha ha, no, ha ha ha, not good, ha 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 ha." He was laughing so hard that he was about to cry. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have been so curious as to sneak a peek. It would have been fine if he had really seen something, but he had been hung here without seeing anything. He felt so wronged. How can it not be good? I think it's pretty good. Look, it's windy here, and there's a night view to enjoy. No one will disturb you. It can't be any better. She supported her chin with one hand and smiled with her eyes narrowed. Besides, you dared to peek, so you have to bear the consequences. Don't blame your master. Nothing can be accomplished without rules. You know this too. All right. I'll chat with you here for a while, okay? Keep laughing. It's fine. If your voice becomes hoarse tomorrow, I'll treat it. Don't, ha 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 ha, don't, ha ha ha. Chapter 1279. She smiled as she watched his face turn pale after hearing her words. She comforted him, "Don't be nervous, I was just saying. I'll do it next time, ha ha ha. I won't dare to do it next time, ha 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 ha." Hui Lang hurriedly expressed his stance. Even if you beat him to death, he would never dare to peek at them again. Luckily, it was his master who punished him today. If it was the ghost doctor, then he would really be in for a tragedy. Moreover, he didn't know her and was just saying it casually. It was just that he hadn't seen her for a long time, so he had almost forgotten that he had suffered a lot at her hands. Fengjiu chatted with Hui Lang for a while. All right. Most of the time, it was her talking while Hui Lang laughed. Only when she estimated that Xianyuan Mose should have finished bathing, did she stand up and say to Hui Lang, "All right, I won't accompany you anymore. You can laugh here slowly. But don't laugh so scary. It's so late at night, if you laugh so loudly and hoarsely, it'll really scare people." As soon as she finished speaking, she waved her hand and walked towards the main courtyard while Hui Lang couldn't stop laughing. When she returned to the main courtyard, she saw a certain person sitting at the head of the bed in his underwear reading a book. Seeing her come in, he raised his eyes and glanced over. "You're back. The bird's nest is on the table, quickly eat it while it's hot." Fengjiu looked at the table and saw a stew pot and a small bowl. She asked, "Have you eaten?" "I don't really like this, you eat it." He flipped through the book in his hand and didn't even raise his head as he spoke. Seeing this, Fengjiu sat down at the table and scooped up a bowl to eat. Compared to normal bird's nest, this blood bird's nest was more nourishing and nutritious. The taste of the egg white was also very strong, and the texture was very smooth. Xianyuan Mose said he didn't want to eat, so she ate it herself. Bird's nest didn't have any effect on men, so this kind of bird's nest was only suitable for women. "What book are you reading?" She glanced inside and asked. What book was this guy sitting on the bed reading? Was he so engrossed in it? When Xianyuan Mose heard this, his hand paused in the middle of flipping through the book. He glanced outside to make sure that she couldn't see him, then cleared his throat and said, "It's a Tao Te Ching." Even he felt a little embarrassed to lie through his teeth, and his expression became a little uncomfortable. After estimating that she would finish eating, he closed the book. The cover was indeed a copy of the Tao Te Ching. As for whether the content inside was the Tao Te Ching or not, only he knew. She watched as he closed the book and stuffed it under the pillow. Only then did he get up and walk out. He came to the table and sat down. Seeing that she had finished the stew, he said, "Tomorrow night, I'll ask the kitchen to stew some cordyceps soup for you. Take turns to eat. If I eat like this every day, how will I become fat?" She put down the bowl and asked with a smile. Hearing this, he looked at her thoughtfully. "I heard that it feels better when you're fatter." Fengjiu rolled her eyes. As expected of a man, his way of thinking was different from a woman's. "It's getting late, I'll go back first. See you tomorrow." She stood up and said. She planned to go back to take a bath and have a comfortable sleep. She thought about what he said earlier and thought about how to give him a surprise. "And, go back and sleep early." He nodded and didn't ask her to stay because they were in the same courtyard. After sending her out, he went back to bed to rest. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.